We've just got the last two joining now that I'm expecting. So I think we can go ahead.
Okay, great. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the City of Monona Plan Commission. This is Monday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. And with that, I'll ask you to call the roll.
Chair Moore,
Here.
Alder Goforth,
Here.
Mr. Holmberg,
Here.
Ms. Fallett,
Here.
Mr. Stein,
Here.
Mr. Holmquist,
Here.
and Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. DePaula is excused.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 24th, 2022?
Move approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Rob. Any changes, corrections, additions? Chris?
On page 2, section B, at the very end of that, there should be some mention of whether or not the motion carried.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, with that correction, all those in favor, approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the minutes carry. Appearances this evening. Doug, what do we have?
We received one message from Peter McKeever, who would like to appear. I think I see a couple others on the call, but I received the request from him to speak.
Okay, great. We'll start with Peter, and I will just, for anybody who might be here to speak this evening, if you are here for a public hearing or pre-hearing, you're welcome to speak during that time. You don't have to speak during appearances. And otherwise, if you're here to speak during appearances, we'd ask that you try to keep your remarks to 3 minutes. And the commission's charge is to simply be listening as opposed to responding to the appearance that you make. So with that, Peter, why don't you go ahead?
Muted.
You're muted.
I'm unmuted now. My apologies.
Okay. You could announce yourself and tell us where you live, Peter.
I'm Peter McKeever. I live on Southern Circle in the warm part of Monona down south. Thank you for a few minutes. I wanted to comment on the Slindy proposal for the Village Lanes. I'll do it now rather than doing the hearing. And I had a conversation with Bert Slindy earlier in the week. So he's heard these comments as well. I had two issues. One, generally, I'm very, very supportive of the project. I think it's a fine project, and I don't have any particular problems with it. I am concerned that we don't have a concrete proposal, no pun intended, from the post office yet. I would really hate to lose the post office in Monona. I think that would be a tragedy, and I'd really like to see the city get involved in discussions with them if it's appropriate, and try and pin down an agreement for the post office to go into that space. My second comment has to do with the building itself. Monona is a bird city. We've been designated as a bird city. And Bert and I talked about this. I asked him to consider putting bird-safe glass on the building or taking steps to reduce the impact of bird collisions on the building. And I asked the commission to think about this as well. I don't know that you necessarily have any authority to do that or not. I'll leave that up to you, but you might maybe make it a request or a condition. We lose up to 1 billion birds a year in this country to bird striking buildings. And from the studies that Madison Audubon has done in the Madison area, it's estimated that we're killing tens of thousands of migratory birds right here in the Madison area because of our habitat and our proximity to the Mississippi flyway. We get a lot of birds through here. There are a number of ways that we can do this. I understand that Burton understandably has some concerns about cost. There are a lot of cost-free or reduced cost ways to do this, one of which is to include less glass in the building, but there are other things that can be done with film and dots and things on the window applied otherwise post-construction to help reduce this problem. It's a serious problem. Madison has a bird-safe glass ordinance that requires bird-safe glass on certain kinds of buildings over 10,000 square feet. It would be interesting for Monona to propose something like that and to consider it. A number of other communities across the country have done it. I know that's not your purview on the Plan Commission, but it's certainly something that the members of the commission and the alders on the commission could think about and perhaps bring before the council. Bert, and I'll let Bert speak for himself. He told me he would certainly look into it. He would discuss it with his architect, and I appreciate that. But I'd really like to have the Plan Commission lean on the developer on this issue to the extent that you can, and on future developers who come before you. We're going to have more infill in construction in Monona. It would have been nice to have done some of this at the Current and other places, but those buildings are built. We'll move on, but we're going to have more infill in the community. It's a major issue. We are a bird city, and I think it would be a really strong statement from Monona if we took some action on this kind of an issue and did what it could to protect birds from hitting glass, which almost always kills the bird, stuns it. Sometimes they fall down and look like they get up, but they usually don't survive. And we don't see many carcasses around because predators get them. The foxes and other animals come and grab those carcasses before we see them usually, but we know that they're there. Madison Audubon has collected hundreds of carcasses on UW campus with some volunteers doing study work. So we know it's an issue in our community. So that's my comment. I'd appreciate it if you'd save the post office and do what you can to talk to Bert and his team about putting some bird safe glass on the building. Thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, is anybody else here to appear this evening? Hearing none, we'll close the appearance section and move to unfinished business. Number 5A, public hearing on the request by One City Schools for approval of a new comprehensive sign plan at 1707 West Broadway. Case number S-022-2021. David, welcome back.
Hey, good evening all. It's nice to see you all again. Thanks, Nancy.
Sure. Why don't you go ahead with whatever presentation you all have this evening.
All right. So also with me are Amy Duval from Zebra Dog and Tammy McCullough, some familiar faces for you all from JLA. And we want to just share with you the plan that's been updated based on our initial conversation with you all. We think we've taken the comments and come back with something that hits the mark that you are looking for, and we're excited to share with you our plan. So without further ado, Amy, I'll let you walk the commission through what we've submitted, and we'll be here to answer any questions or take any comment from you all afterwards.
Absolutely. Would you mind sharing? There we go. Okay, are you able to see the screen?
We are.
Wonderful. So thank you again for the time tonight. We were able to visit you back in November for a pre-hearing. So like David said, we were hoping to address some of the issues that had come up before, some of the concerns. And so we'll get started. So just to refresh your memory from November, I just wanted to take you on a little guided tour. So not much has changed with the proposed layout, except for a few tweaks in sizes and potential locations, including the first of which is the little red dot here for the monument sign coming in off of Bridge. And just to take you through, again, the banner signs that kind of take you as breadcrumbs wrapping around the school over to the entrance. During our last meeting, and I believe Tammy presented, there was an addition of a traffic bulb at the bottom, which I can tell you is not the exact design, but a placeholder of where that will go. And for signage purposes, we added some directional signs in green to help direct the traffic up to, which is kind of a one-way path to the entrance of the front door of the school, which is toward this parking lot. Again, with the banners kind of lining the way and some in blue dot building signage to help brand the school and help kind of create a cohesive package to identify and kind of create that entry that we're looking for One City Schools. So to get in a little bit more detail, this is your entrance off of Bridge. You'll see that we had originally proposed a monument sign a little bit closer to this light pole. And what we did is we moved it over a bit to the right, so it helps to direct traffic around the corner a little bit more, and lead one on the path to get to One City Schools front door. And we, as you'll see, reduced the size of that monument sign to fit within the requirements of the city sign code. And I'm just going to point out one small addition, but we added, just to help with the branding and the naming of the school, the Pleasant T. Rowland Leadership Campus text at the bottom. This sign will be lit at night for the One City Schools, and that will be the only, and then of course the logo, and that would be the only part of the illumination. And then as we wrap around, I'm actually going to go to the banners because they're so wonderful to look at. As you go those breadcrumbs around the corner and down angle, you're going to see a mixture of identification for Pleasant T. Rowland Leadership Campus and One City School. So to help brand with the logo, the color for that collegiate feel, and just a welcoming environment. Those will be located on light poles, which also help to light the path for those that are unaware of how to get to the school, as we have, obviously in our wonderful winters, darker times at drop off and pick up sometimes, and then after school events that will help light the path to get to the school. So I'm just gonna pop back up to those directional signs. We featured one near the traffic bulb, and then another as you get back closer to the entrance for drop off and pickup. And these will be updatable signs that help to direct everybody in that one-way traffic pattern during drop off and pickup times, and help to direct toward the exit to get back out of the area, knowing that this was once a property, part of WPS and their kind of campus, and has now been split off. So although you can see a road, there's a specific path for One City to follow as they come back around toward the school. And then of course, direction toward the parking garage. And this, you'll get that view right at the corner, because One City is a school and are occupying a building that was not a school to begin with. You have a lot of entrances, and that can be confusing. This is the first view that you're going to see of the building, so it helps to identify One City Schools, and more prominently the address at 1707 West Broadway. Because again, it was split off from a campus, it's been difficult to get people to the building and to get mail there, from what I hear, accurately. So this would help to identify that building and kind of, again, direct people toward that front entrance. Some details about the signage and where it's placed in the building, and the signage above, which would be illuminated. Here you see in more detail. Although the proposed signage that we have, I guess, exceeds the normal limit, you'll see that each of the items or each of the letters are individual. It's not a solid sign. So we're talking about kind of a raceway behind this that would light the words individually, and it takes up a much more kind of less of a footprint on the building itself. And here you arrive at One City at the front door. For drop off and pickup, the front monuments, or the front illuminated sign above the doors helps to identify the school and the front door. Because there are many doors to get into the school, this is the one that everyone will use coming in and out. And then, of course, to brand and identify Pleasant T. Rowland Leadership Campus and the wonderful gift that Pleasant has bestowed upon the school. So honoring her and also presenting that really nice entry, something that feels like it has always been there and an integral part of the architecture. And here are the detailed sizing and location and some more details on the construction of each of those that fall also within the limits. Again, with that front sign, not a full sign, so it doesn't sit or reside on a backer panel. So it would be individual letters and logo, also to limit the amount of coverage we have in the building. And then the Pleasant T. Rowland Leadership Campus would be pin-mounted dimensional letters, also to look more integral with the building. And the last item, we have the proposed solution for identification on the parking structure, which faces the Beltline Highway. We decreased the size from our last meeting just slightly and chose the location that's most viewable to those in the Beltline to help identify and brand the school and really celebrate who they are. There is no direct visibility to the building itself from the Beltline, and so this is the only identification available right now. It's not lit. It would be applied to a separate backer and something that could be removed and reused in the future for the organization. And those are the details. Does anyone have any questions about the package, or would you like to go back to any pages?
We'll, thank you, Amy. This is just the public hearing portion, so this is your opportunity to speak, and we'll get a chance to speak at the next section. So if there's anybody else from your team that has anything to add, we'd be happy to take that otherwise. Or if there's anyone here that would like to speak during the public hearing portion, whether it's from your team or not, is welcome to speak now before we close the public hearing. Do we have anybody who is here else, David, from your crew that wants to speak, or?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, and I have nothing to add. Thank you, Amy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great. Well, then we'll close the public hearing. And we will move to 5B, consideration of action on a request by One City Schools for approval of a new comprehensive sign plan at 1707 West Broadway, case number S-022-2021. Doug, would you like to start us off?
Yes. Could I just ask Amy, could you stop screen sharing so we can just get the, great,
Yes.
Thank you. Great. So this is the formal consideration of the One City comprehensive signage plan. It was a condition of approval from the zoning permit that was issued in July 2021. The pre-hearing was held in November of last year with generally positive feedback, a couple items that appear to have been addressed. The plans obviously include the monument sign, light pole banners, wall signs, on-site directional signage. This is all to add to the sort of campus feel and help with the identification, especially with the separation there from the WPS campus. The edits have been made based upon feedback, most notably the monument sign now complies with code, as well as the parking deck signage. What the city staff recommendation is approval with the findings of fact and conditions of approval as outlined in the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. With that, I'll open it up to the commission. Chris, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. First, I'd like to say it's a beautiful sign submittal package. You did a great job identifying everything and explaining it all. It's really well done. And again, thanks for addressing virtually all of our requests. The one that I will say is I don't see a hardship or a reason why we have directional signage at 5 foot tall versus our code, which is 4 foot tall. And Doug, as far as how we measure it, I know you measured the entire face of the structure, which I would say we probably wouldn't do. Normally we measure the signage, a rectangle around the signage, in which case they're pretty close to our code of 4 feet. I don't know exactly, not exact dimension, but it looks pretty close to the 4 feet. The only difference is, does it need to be 5 foot in the air or 4 foot in the air? And our code calls for 4 foot. I don't know what the average person is, probably 5.5 foot tall. So you're talking a directional sign almost as tall as most people. And I don't see a reason why we need that. It's not hidden or anything. And I think if we allow it, every applicant subsequent to this is going to come in and ask for 5 foot tall. Because we know it's always a race to the top. How high can I put my signs? So the only change I would suggest would be that we just go with the standard 4 foot tall. There'd still be a couple feet underneath the lettering for mowing, trimming. We don't require landscaping under a directional sign, so there's nothing that will really start impeding on that view. So that would be my only suggestion. Other than that, I think it's a great sign package. I would suggest we put in another finding of fact about let's call them banner / flag signs, since flag signs aren't highly regulated. And that the reasons we have for, the size of the campus, the use on the campus, the amount of private infrastructure, I think those are all good reasons to be allowing it. And I think we all agreed last time we saw you that it really adds some life and I just love the way it makes your campus feel. It feels almost like a real college campus. So I love the signage and the feel for it. And that would be it. Other than that, I think it looks terrific. Well, I think it looks terrific, period. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Susan?
Yeah, nothing to add. I agree. I think it looks great. I appreciate, as Chris said, the changes that you've made, and I think all of it looks wonderful. And I think the 4 foot for the directional signs makes sense, and I would assume you probably don't have an issue with that. Otherwise, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank you, Susan. Rob?
I don't have anything else to add, I don't think. I think it looks great. It's a really nice sign package, well laid out. The design is great. Can move on to the next person.
Christy?
Yeah, agree. The sign package looks fabulous. Great job. I only had one question, and it was about the parking deck. I know you're just going with the icon only. Did you think about putting One City up there, or?
Yeah, we did actually consider putting the One City as part of the logo. And then we thought, anytime you have a name, especially going at high speeds, we thought it might be a safer option. Just a quick glance, that identifiable icon, as opposed to trying to read text. So it kind of crossed our mind. We went back and forth. I think it's a pretty simple, really short One City. But if we start to add the One City schools as part of the logo, it just became a little bit too much.
Understood. Okay.
For greater context too, we had also considered a bit of a mural there on that corner, just something to kind of draw attention to the location without having something that everybody needs to read when they go by. So I thought this was a nice branding option, but as Amy suggested, perhaps a little bit nicer for Beltline traffic.
All right, cool. Yeah, it looks great. Thanks.
Thank you. Maureen?
Yeah, I think it looks great too. I had two questions. The first one is about the monument sign, and I don't know if it's hard to say because what's there right now is the restaurant, but we have another proposal we're going to be talking about in a little bit that is parking on that street, and so I wasn't sure if the parking lane, if the development goes forward, if that was going to obstruct the view of your monument sign. So that just might be something to have a discussion with, just to make sure that it's not being blocked by the parking on the street. And then there was a comment that Doug had in the staff comments about the Pleasant Tea Role and Leadership Campus identification above the main door. and whether it should be a wall sign or an address sign. It seems like a wall sign to me. There's only one address sign allowed, and that's on the front. So I think we need to classify that as a wall sign. Which, combined with the other wall sign on the front, it's still less than our sign code. So it's fine. It looks great. I think it really adds to it. It's not just so heavy right above the door, then it has that nice visual, I don't know the right design words, but it looks good. So,
Thank you.
but yeah, I thought it looked good.
Okay. Thank you, Corinne. Brian?
Nothing to add. I think that's a great proposal, and I agree with the comment of the 4 foot versus 5 foot for directional.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Brian. I would just add, I'm wondering in terms of the monument sign, I know you shifted it over to the right so that kind of hinting to people that you're to go to the right, but I'd be curious to know if any other commission members think there needs to be an arrow or something on the sign, or if those people that are directionally challenged will just figure it out by the small shift. Rob, I'm seeing you shake your head. You think it's good? People won't be directionally challenged?
I think it's good, and there is the added visibility from the banner signs that starts to create that entrance, and I don't think an arrow is necessary.
Okay. Yeah, Chris?
I agree. All you have to do is look left and you can see the end of the road when you drive in. It's a couple hundred feet.
Yeah, I was just thinking in part because of what Corinne said too, in terms of potentially cars blocking some of the sight lines, but they won't block the banners because those are up higher. So, okay. All right. Great. Sounds great. Do I have a motion? Chris?
I'm unmuted. Thanks. I'll move approval with findings of fact 1 through 3 is written by staff. Add finding of fact number 4 that the banner / plague signs as proposed are allowable based on the size of the site, the extent of the private infrastructure, and the use. And then conditions of approval 1 through 4 is written by staff, and add condition of approval number 4 of a maximum 4 foot height for the directional signage.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Corinne, Doug. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, One City.
Thank you.
Good job, Amy.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing it all up and bright.
Appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to 5C, a public hearing for Signage Realty Company on the request of approval for a general development plan, GDP, and precise implementation plan, PIP, for the site located at approximately 112-208 Owen Road for mixed-use development, case number 2-027-2021. Bert and Jeff, you guys are up. If you want to go ahead, and if you brought anybody else with you, the floor is yours this evening. For now.
Thank you. Jeff Gillis, our partner and contractor, is a part of the conversation, as is Kevin Burrow and Andy Messman, And so any design-related questions or suggestions or their comment. We, at our last meeting, which I guess is like
2 months ago.
2 months ago, we had a variety of different recommendations, suggestions, and we have done everything that we can to address those, and we'll let Kevin discuss the building changes or functions that we've created, as well as ask Andy to comment on parking and things of that nature. And we've been asked to just comment on our experience, and so I don't even know where to begin with that. Our experience is pretty deep. Our partner has tremendous experience in construction. Jeff, I don't know how many years you've been at it, but a long time. And we have been involved in all sorts of apartments and condominium development and construction. I was born and raised in Monona. I started my career in Monona at 5007 Monona Drive, 1974. I still have an office at 4705 Monona Drive, raised 4 kids in the Monona School District. I went to Monona schools. Jeff's graduated from the University of Wisconsin here.
Yep.
So we've been at it a long time. Jeff's been licensed since he's been 18. I've been licensed since I was, I don't know how, too old, but 1974, I was an apprentice of Ross Gordon Realty. I managed a Stark real estate company, opened their east office on Cottage Grove Road. I built involved with Monroe Commons.
Monona Woodlands condominiums.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have a wide variety of background and multifamily experience as well. So
yeah.
Anyway.
So, you know, we're just here to talk about the culmination of the things that we have heard over time from both ends of the spectrum, and that's the proposal essentially you've had before you, is that we're doing our level best to provide housing options and opportunities that Monona desperately needs. I think we are all aware of that there is housing problems relative to availability, affordability, and so that's really what's driven our density. We want to be able to have on-site management for our properties, and
yeah, we find that essential to the operations and experience that renters and residents demand today.
Yeah.
So
we have 200 units in Green Bay area, and on-site management we have found to be a godsend for the residents, as well as just running a really good, clean operation. We fully intend to own and operate this property, and it's going to be something that we're very close to and we're very concerned about. So Peter did call regarding his concerns and thoughts about bird protection and safety, and I think he was a little surprised that we too shared sensitivity towards birds. I have a nice big picture of the birds of Wisconsin hanging in my living room, you know, so we're sensitive to that. I told him we'd look into it, and we talked to Kevin, our architect, regarding this, and unknowingly to me, Kevin has a great deal of experience in this area, as does Andy. Andy too is a bird sensitive person, and so all I can say at this point is that we are evaluating that. My knee-jerk reaction was it was something, Peter, that I don't have a clue what this sort of stuff costs. And so that's why I've deferred to Kevin and Andy. And so we'll investigate that. I just know that cost is a very sensitive issue to us, and we're very grateful that our partner's involved personally and financially, and he's a great contractor. And we are very sensitive to cost. So, as you all know, we have a crisis in terms of supply, availability, cost. All of these pressures pressure every development. So that's where we'll leave it at that for now. And if we can go through some of the changes and responses that we've had, happy to do so. And Kevin, if you want to kind of talk about what we've done with the plan, floor is yours. And if you have any comments along the way, please feel free to fire them in.
All right, thank you very much. I will share my screen here so that everybody can see our presentation. Can everybody see the screen?
No. Swing and a miss.
Not yet. There you go.
How about now? Good.
Yep.
So as you can tell, as you know, I should say, the site that we're dealing with is the existing site of Village Lanes. We are before you for the general development plan, and we also have the intention of phase one being on the western side of the property here, where I'm mousing around over the existing Village Lanes property, with the desire then to relocate the post office into the first floor of that building. so that phase 2 can commence sometime in the future.
Can I interject something to that?
Of course.
Regarding the post office, Peter brought that up again, and Jeff commented, because Jeff has dealt with the postal representative more than I have. But we are in very close contact with those folks, and we're awaiting the next session.
We're awaiting on the lease extension for the existing facility, which will get us to 2024-ish. And we will be working directly with the post office to relocate that store. But that's, part of the process, and everything is a process with them.
And while on one hand, Peter's suggestion, I'd love to have the city involved, but I don't honestly know.
If you've got somebody to make a bunch of phone calls, that'd be great.
It's a process. To track folks down is unreal. And there's layers of folks to deal with. And we too have heard the rumors when we bought the building. We heard that the post office was seriously considering shutting that Monona location down, and that's nothing we wanted to see. And I think we've mentioned that in the past, but I just want to underscore that is important to us. We view it as an amenity to the community. And we know that it contributes to traffic, but we also know that it's a major amenity. And having said all of that, just understand we can't get an ironclad contract from them because all of their leases contain a 90-day provision to terminate, period, end of story. And if you don't, their comment is if you don't like it, that's too bad.
That's the way it goes with the United States government leases. So it's not just the post office. It's
that's true. That's true with all federal leases.
Yeah. But anyway, we're working diligently to get it to the next spot. So go ahead, Captain.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Just an axonometric view of a site as well. Some street shots, we showed these last time, but you got the village lanes here and then the post office down in the lower left-hand corner. With our proposed development, again, phase 1 is to the top of the page, which is on the western portion of the site. We're looking at doing a mixed-use building. It is a 4-story building with a total of 102 apartment units. And we also have 100 parking stalls underneath the footprint of the building. And we also have surface parking along the front, 21 stalls in front, 26 down this new private drive that's being created, and an additional 29 stalls in the back of the property as well. Some of the requests from the previous presentation was clarification on amenities, providing some bike parking stalls, and then making sure we have proper circulation throughout the property, and then also varying up the facade and making sure we had a varied facade and more instead of a monolithic looking building. So we've made all those changes as part of this development. What I'd like to highlight on this screen here is the outdoor amenity that's been created over a portion of the parking garage area. This is all a fully landscaped, occupiable space for all the residents. So it's a great outdoor gathering space. We'll have further details on this shortly. And we also have created, highlighted in this red box in the upper corner here, is an outdoor dog run area. This will be a dog-friendly building, and residents will have direct access to the first floor units. They're also creating a safe, secure space for the dogs to be able to come out and relieve themselves in this area here. And we also have added additional landscaping screening along this western property line as well to further create this great outdoor amenity for this property here while being sensitive to the neighbors further to the west. And then phase 2 development is shown at the bottom of the screen here, which is also intended to be a mixed-use building, potentially commercial space up front here, and then that's a total of 92 apartment units within this building, with additional underground parking of another 83 stalls. Here's a better view of that outdoor gathering space that we've created over phase 1. We've got the plan up here in the upper left-hand corner, but it's basically to create a nice outdoor amenity with various spaces. We've got potential for fire pits, gaming area, general outdoor seating. There will be concrete pavers on pedestals, so it'll be a nice, steady and secure space to be able to gather at, outdoor grilling stations, etc. So it's going to have a great vibe to it, having direct connection into the building as the amenity for the residents. And the way the building has been laid out, you will have a sight line of this even as you're entering the building from the main entry along that private drive.
I'd
Just to highlight,
I'd like to just add one other thing. There was a suggestion to have us evaluate the entryway to have more of an open space. We looked at that, and we didn't feel comfortable with it for a couple of reasons. One, we'd be able to have a view corridor here of the deck and the outdoor area right from the front door. It'll look through. But more importantly, as we debated about this, we're really, really sensitive about security today. And we'll probably have, what, Jeff, 30, 40 cameras, would you say?
Yeah, 30 to 40 cameras, but the thought process of walk-through archway, an unsecure situation is something that we really weren't comfortable with.
Yeah.
So that's...
We discussed that. We just wanted to bring that up. We didn't ignore it by any means. We had a pretty healthy debate. I know Jeff Gillis looked at a property to just kind of see the lay of the land with it, and we just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. So, as I was mentioning, the stormwater management hasn't changed from the original submittal, and just to clarify that we are containing all stormwater underneath these main paving area and structures underneath grade, which will then slowly dissipate out into the storm system as needed. Here's a layout of the basement plan. One thing I wanted to highlight is the addition of, we've got a dog wash area and a bike bench in the center of the space directly behind the main elevators. And we also have additional bike parking in the basement area, which is secured. And then in front of every single parking stall is the opportunity to hang one or two bikes for those people that have that particular parking stall. And we have created a secure pathway through there to the elevators as well. The first floor area, we've got the main entry shown where I'm mousing around here towards the center of the screen. And what we've done is we have opened up this area with regards to the interior space. It's still a secure vestibule for security, as was just mentioned by Bert. But then we have made sure that we have a clear view corridor right through the community room up to that outdoor gathering space. So as soon as you enter the space, these will be large door openings in the community room, glass doors and patio doors out to the outdoor space as well. So it's all centered around this main elevator core as well within the building. We also have an exercise room located up front here. And then the main commercial space, which fronts along Owen Road, is earmarked for the post office, hopefully, in this corner here, and then a secondary tenant on this northwestern corner as well. Second and third floor plans are identical with a mixture of studios, one and two bedroom apartments. And then the fourth floor area, the building does step in slightly. It has reduced mass at the top of the building, and then again, additional apartments at this level of studios, ones and two bedrooms. We've updated the renderings for this design, and one of the comments that was made previously was with regards to providing additional masonry to the building, along with better fenestration detailing along the facades. So we've got the masonry shown along the entire base of the building here for the commercial space, with a lot of storefront glass, as would be required for the commercial tenants. And we've introduced masonry at the corners, and that carries down through the center of the buildings as well. You can get a view corridor down here where you can see how we've broken up the facade. We've got these relief points, and then again the masonry shown here, and this is that center private drive. There's a view looking back towards the post office space in front here, and the main entry is here, which I'll jump to a closer view here. So now we've got this really highlighted, sort of serve as a gateway into the main entry to the building. A lot of glass area here, we've got a canopy and additional masonry brought up to the third floor level at this elevation. All the other apartments do have their own private balconies and patios as well, as you'll see throughout all of these renderings. Here's a view looking back now down that private alley, or private driveway towards Owen Road in front. And then around the back corner here is where we have that dog run area, and then residents have access to be able to come right out the building through a stairwell exit towards that dog run area. Here's that area over here on the left-hand side of the screen, and again, that access point for all residents to be able to come out through that stairs. Here's the first view then into that courtyard area on the back side of the building. You can see how the additional landscaping is really creating a nice gathering space with some visual and acoustic privacy. And we've got the outdoor gathering area. Here's a closer, more of a bird's eye view looking down into that space. Again, with numerous amenities out here. Got some lawn area for gameplay. We've got the fire pit area, grilling stations, seating areas. So it's just a variety of options for the residents to be able to come directly out of the building here to utilize this space. And then those residents that do have their apartments at this level also have the opportunity to step directly out of their apartment into this space. Just another view looking back towards that as well, so you get a good sense as to the scale and character of that. And that dog run area is just off here on the right-hand side of the screen. Stepping back now, you can kind of get a better sense as to how that new additional landscaping screening is coming into play here along that western property line. And then sort of a bird's eye view looking down into the whole campus area here. Again, with phase 1 being in the foreground here and phase 2 in the background with that main private drive through the middle. So with that, I can end the presentation at this point and see if there's any initial questions.
Okay, great, thank you. If you could,
Want me to stop sharing?
yeah, that'd be terrific. Thank you, Kevin.
Let's see here.
We're not quite there. There we go.
There we go.
There we
One more
go.
step.
All right. Thank you. Is anyone else here to speak during the public hearing portion of this proposal? Seeing none, then we'll close the public hearing and go to item number 5D, the pre-hearing conference by Signage Realty on the request of approval for general development plan and precise implementation plan PIP for the site located at approximately 112-208 Owen Road for mixed-use development, case number 2-027-2021. Doug?
Thank you. So just by way of kind of introduction here as well and clarification, I just wanted to state, obviously this is posted both for a general development plan and a precise implementation plan. Part of that was owing to the posting deadlines for those and sort of the timeline that they were on. I did have a conversation with the applicant last week just to talk about the process a little bit more. And at this point, really, they're looking for feedback on the general development plan specifically. I know there's obviously some overlap with some of the materials that were submitted, but the goal here is they're looking to have discussion with the CDA about potential TIF discussion and things like that in March, which is sort of late March, that meeting would be held. So they're looking to get some clarity here specifically on the GDP with the phase 1 PIP to follow pretty closely. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be the focus at this point is getting clarity, number of units, things like that for specifically for the GDP. And I've spoken to them about modifications and things like that as well. So just off the bat, I wanted to kind of give that introduction. Just sort of a little bit of background here as well. This has been through a couple times with the Plan Commission already. Obviously, there was a recommendation at the last meeting to City Council for a rezoning. The current zoning for this is retail business, and the recommendation to City Council was to switch that to Community Design District. That would allow for this phased development approach for the applicant to pursue the GDP and PIP. That's expected to be formally considered next Monday at the City Council meeting. It already had its first read, but it's scheduled for the second read next Monday. The site itself is just over 4 acres with 194 residential units proposed. There's now a total of 5,400, just over, square feet of commercial space included. That was certainly a discussion point at the December meeting, was sort of the true mixed use nature of the developments and recommendation of a little bit more retail or commercial. And so phase 2 does now have that commercial fronting Owen Road for a total of 5,400, including the USPS as discussed. So the units range in size from studios through to 2-bed plus dens. And as mentioned in the staff report, the applicants are looking to offer some workforce housing with around 50 units potentially being included with that as well. Those discussions, as I understand, continue. The parking is discussed in the staff report, with there being underground parking for both phases, parking in the front and back surface, as well as the connector street as well. And so the connector street, as I understand, will be part of phase 1 of the project. And so for the calculations, those elements are included within that. So with that being said, there is a surplus at phase 1 right now with parking, with a deficit at phase 2, totaling by code a deficit of 5 stalls at this point for vehicle parking. I think part of the discussion the commission may choose to have would be if there's any flexibility there, with daytime uses, overlapping of certainly of the surface parking, for example. And obviously now there is extensive bicycle parking as well, with the dedicated stalls underground, as well as racks being shown at grade as well. The green space was another piece to discuss. The city typically targets 30% open space, within the code. One thing that was outlined in the materials was the difference between open space and green space, with specifically the plaza deck, the amenity space being the difference there. And so it is heavily landscaped, but it is not dedicated green space. So I think that's something the commission could discuss as to the allocation and categorization of those. Circulation has been another piece, both at Plan Commission and City Council, that has been discussed. Traffic with the retail uses, the commercial space, especially the post office, and just sort of the difference from the Village Lane site in particular to this more intense use. And so I have spoken with the applicant, about the possibility of maybe some sort of traffic study, and that's something I think they'd be looking for a little bit more information or guidance on tonight. The applicant explained the differences and the changes to the massing of the architecture. More masonry included now, some more stepped massing as well. Still keeping that pedestrian level at grade, really sort of breaking up the feel of some of the massing there as well. Amenities have been discussed as well. I know that was a talking point back in December. So both inside the building as well as outside, with that sort of landscaped outside courtyard area. And then finally, the landscaping and lighting are included in the plans. There is a landscape plan for phase 1. I think one of the main things that stood out was the allocation of the trees. Certainly the barrier was included, almost the buffer between the existing buildings and the amenity space on the west of the site. The trees there, as categorized, were evergreen and not canopy trees. So I think just potential guidance, some suggestions about that may be something, given the extent of the parking, the commission chooses to discuss. That's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Brian, would you like to start us off?
Can you come back to me in just a minute?
Sure. No problem. Chris, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Okay. I'm just going to go in a random order. I hope you don't mind. I have notes all over. So the first thing is that, really we're talking about GDP primarily tonight, right? And what the GDP does is it really sets density, it sets building massing, it sets uses, it sets a lot of the parameters for this. So although you have a lot of details for phase 1, we'll need to see some of that for phase 2, not as detailed as it is, but it will set. I mean, when we talked about more commercial, and if the GDP were approved as it sits tonight, that would also lock in some commercial in your phase 2 building. I just want to make sure you're aware of everything that happens. The GDP also, it talks about all the basics on what would be allowed on this site. And then as far as phase 1, phase 2, that's really more the PIP information, where you come in with a PIP for phase 1 and the phasing to put in the second one. But that's where your phasing comes in. With the GDP, there's no phasing, and the GDP is over the entire property, just so we're clear on how that works.
Okay, thank you.
I would say, can you read that? No. The question about, yeah, it's not good. The question about the green space. One thing we do, and it is written as green space, is if you don't have enough green space and there's areas where the commission feels comfortable with it, where you do additional amenities and things to make up for that, we've been known to do that many times. And for me, what you're doing back in that patio area and with all those amenities, that absolutely makes up for, I would consider it green space. So even though it doesn't technically go into the calculation, I absolutely would consider it with all the amenities you're putting in there. That's a substantive item for this whole development, something that really jumps out and makes it better. And I think you've done a really nice job back there with what you're doing at that area. So for me, at least, that would absolutely be considered adequate for the green space. One thing we talked about last time, but would be important in the GDP, would be a drawing, a site plan, if you will, that shows on how that existing commercial, which is part of phase 2, operates and matches in with your phase 1 development, where will be traffic access, how it'll work, what will be cut off, what won't. That would be something that would be important for the GDP to know. How will that be functional once you build your main road? And in that main road, you show in all your visuals that you put in with our packet, it shows that sidewalk in along the east side. Yet in your phasing plan, it shows the sidewalk just outside of that. What is your intent to put that in with the sidewalk I'm talking about on the east side of the main road with parallel parking? Is that intent to have that sidewalk with phase 1 or phase 2?
Kevin, can you maybe answer that one?
Yeah.
Yep.
That particular sidewalk will be part of phase 2, as the pavement edge line is close to the edge of phase 1. We could look at doing a walkway alongside of there, but in the long-term future, we'd like to have a green terrace along that parking area so we could have some additional landscaping added in.
Okay, because my comment would have been, I would love to see that sidewalk, but I don't know how you build that building if you put that sidewalk in. I can see that sidewalk being completely destroyed during construction of the phase 2 building. So as much as all your drawings showed it with phase 1, as much as I'd love to see that, we will have the sidewalk on the west side, I believe, and there will be full access there. And if somebody parks on the east side for now, I gotta guess the only place they're going is west. They're not going to be coming east. I saw it in all your drawings, and I just imagined what would happen during construction. Number one, of underground parking, but then as you're trying to build 4 stories above with all the lifts and everything, it looked like you'd be wasting your money putting in a phase 1. General comment. Landscaping. I like what you've done around the back patio and all that. You're light on all the canopy trees, as I think staff mentioned, and in particular, I would say in front of the building, you've got a couple islands. I'd say there should be a couple canopy trees. This is just general, and it's up to you to design it, but up by the building. Along the side of the building with all that parking, there should be at least 2 or 3 more. Again, we should see what Rob says, but generally in terrace trees, I think we put them 50, 60 feet on center. Rob might have more information on that. And in the back, I would say you show 2, there should be 6 back there. The islands you have right near your 88 parking, if you just stretch that parking lot a smidge, you'd get a little wider island there, and you'd be able to put a couple canopy trees there, and then certainly on the back corners or even by the front corners. General thing, but I look at those canopy trees because there needs to be some around the other sides of the building too. I like where you saturated your landscaping around your main area, but it needs to have something around the building, and I think those would be appropriate places for that. A question for the architect. The stuff that looks like wood, what is that? Or the brown sections on the building?
That is a composite siding, but you can buy it pre-finished with a wood grain look and texture to it. So it's a special finish. It's produced by a company called Wood Tone, and we've used it on numerous buildings in the Madison area here, and it is very successful in sort of a long-term stained wood look.
Okay, one reason I asked is on your drawings, it looks like shadow lines, like it has a dimension away from the building. Is that true?
It is expressed forward of the building, so yes, it does stick out from the main plane of the building, and that's part of an architectural feature that we designed into the building.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've asked you to break up this big facade. And to me, that pulling out from the building a little bit adds some more texture, if you will, or movement on the front of the building. So it's not just that one long plane. So I wanted to make sure that wasn't me just misreading your plans.
No, thank you.
I will reiterate what we said when we first met and what Alder McKeever mentioned was post office. You know how much we all care about the post office. And Bert, I know you care about it too. I see a community room on floors 1, 2, and 3, but not floor 4. What's the thinking there?
That was an unfortunate mistake. On floors 2 and 3, that's actually a 1-bedroom apartment. The community room is focused on the first floor level with direct access to the outdoor gathering space. So we wanted all the activity to occur on the main level and have the upper floors be more quieter spaces for the residents. Okay,
the reason I asked is because we did talk about amenities that make this something that's desirable 10 and 20 years from now. So where my mind's going is looks like a really cool outdoor area, but when you have inclement weather, it's a little too cold. What do you have in this building for amenities? Just the community room? And I saw the dog wash downstairs.
Yeah, we have the community room, the exercise room, and the entire lobby space actually has been greatly enlarged from the previous submittal. So there'll be gathering spaces both within the community space and out of it, more of a casual seating area like a coffee shop type situation where people are coming and going out of the main entry area. And then the community room itself can be programmed with various activities. So I guess, Jeff, I'm not sure if you want to speak to anything you've done on your other buildings.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about full kitchen in there. It kind of depends on who you ask if that's a good idea or not. But
well, our experiences are in Green Bay, we have full kitchens, and I mean full kitchens, and they're really not used.
Yeah, it's more of a hot pot crowd than a full kitchen crowd that tends to.
Yeah, and we thought, oh, this is awesome. They can cook away, and we have nice, silverware and china and all that jazz, and it was but you never know. And we also observed that when you do use the community room, and we have one on the 5th floor, we also have one on the 4th floor in the other 2 buildings. And once again, you got people coming, and they then have access to different floors. And we thought it might be a wise move to just keep it on the main entry level so that you're not going up 4 stories to visit a room.
And wander around, potentially.
And people are curious by nature, and so that's why we did that. And having said that, we don't know if it's the right decision or not.
Yeah, but there are a little bit more amenities. We've looked at the latch door system it's more of a technology system that the current, I believe, is using. The door amenities that we have are fob systems through Schlage, and it's a very high security system. You can even use it on your phone, so you don't need your fob. We find that a lot of tenants, they like the interior space, but they spend most of their time in their apartment. So a lot of our amenities are focused in unit. Washer and dryer, stainless steel appliances, quartz or granite countertops, LVT flooring.
Pantries, walk-in closets.
Walk-in closets, pantries. I mean, it's a full build in the unit. Charging stations within the wall plugs for your smartphones and devices. It's a techie situation, and it really is everywhere. So.
Also in our lobby too, we've also found that people really do love to come down and do some of their work in the lobbies, and they use it. We have a coffee bar set up down there, which we would have here as well, and just it's a very inviting space. So we have TVs out, and people come down and hang out. So
I got to say, I like your idea of a bigger lobby area and an area kind of like a little town gathering area, town center type of thing, in a small scale where people can just interact a little bit. We need a little more of that around everywhere where they can talk. I'll again reiterate what Alder McKeever mentioned about, if there's something we can do about bird strikes. I'm not very well versed in it, but I'm sure you will be by the next time we see you.
But we will be.
And last thing, of course, the best for the last 2 is, as I said last time, I still believe it's a little dense here. I see we've got a chart, Doug, that shows compared to other places. I think it's unfair to put the current 2 in that chart because that was a comprehensive development of the entire triangle. And when we did that, along with all the other things, part of that agreement with the developer, we chose them to redevelop that was the 1 acre park and all the amenities there. And there's substantial commercial. So I think if you look at that, you have to take in the context of that entire triangle. And when you look at the rest of them, this is denser than other things we've done, which is showing up a little bit in the parking and some of the things. I think you've done a really great job hitting all of our other requests. And if the whole thing came out to this and what are we talking? 300 or more parking stalls? 400? What is it? No, it's got to be 400. If we're off by 5, I don't know who amongst us can say that's the right or the wrong number. I think you're talking maybe 1%, 1 or 2%. That is the difference. I'm not certain that there'll be great sharing between the commercial and the residential only because there's so little commercial. And I suspect if an apartment resident came in after the commercial hours and parked, they probably wouldn't be leaving before the commercial, whether it's post office or whatever else open. So it could still be a conflict. But as far as overall parking, I think we've come pretty close. And then the last thing would be, as always, I'm always more brick. I like what you've done, but if you find a few more areas where it works, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris? Susan?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I think it looks great as well. One question about the post office parking, I guess. Is there a plan to ultimately designate some of those spaces during the day for the post office? I mean, I would think that would be a good idea. People coming in with packages and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that. I think they have 4 designated right now at their current spot, and they'd be losing about 500 square feet. But yeah, we can definitely look at a designated parking situation.
I would think that makes, and then my other question was the ADA parking, and it makes sense to have it somewhere where it is, but I just wonder whether you need a space closer to the main entrance too, or is that an issue, or just so people can get out and come right in, or I don't know if that's.
Let's have Andy look at that, Andy and.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can look at that.
Sure. Absolutely.
But otherwise, I agree with a lot of the comments. I'd like to see more canopy trees too, possibly the evergreens on the west side, provide better screening right there, but other canopies around the property would be good. And I'd also express support for looking into the bird protection. That makes sense. We have that at our own house, and it makes me think I should look into what we can do. So, yeah. Nothing else to add though. Otherwise, I think it looks great.
Thank you.
Is there a piano? Is someone else hearing a piano?
Yeah, that's my son practicing. Sorry.
Oh.
I'm muting myself now.
Sorry. Sounds great.
Stay with it, yeah.
Yeah. Rob?
Okay, I think I'm going to be bouncing around a little bit too here, and I'm just going to give you all my comments, whether they're GDP related or PIP related. You can address them now or later. But in general, I'm excited about the project. I think it's the change in zoning makes a lot of sense. Going to a GDP plan, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's start here. I'll start with density. I think it's a little high in density. I would like to see that reduced some. Maybe you can make up some extra green space in that way and make a better functioning overall project. I think jumping into the architecture of it, you create quite a corridor with those 2 4-story buildings, and I realize that they have 4-story buildings and adjacent uses, but they're not back to back. They're perpendicular to each other, or it's a 4-story that jumps down to a 2-story. There's a little more articulation in the architecture, and I would like to see that, whether it's pushing back some on the top levels and creating an outdoor plaza space on the roof for tenants, or maybe that can be some sort of amenity that reduces some of that density while providing more amenities for the tenants. I had a question about if you could speak to the plans for phase 2 of the project and what the amenities for that common space, is it something you're looking to be similar to phase 1? I think at the last meeting you talked about having that pass through and a lot of that visibility from phase 2 to phase 1, which spurred the conversation of having a more open corridor. I'll stop right there and let you respond to that. Like, what's the plan for the amenity spaces outdoors on phase 2?
Well, let me just say that phase 2, I struggle with phase 2, and I'll tell you why. That's at least 3 years away. And if I had it my way, I'd be pounding on the door to say, let's build condominiums. That is not practical. We can't get it financed. It isn't a viable solution at this time. And so when we look at it, I don't know what phase 2 holds in as much as in terms of exacts for that building. We learned a lot in our first building in Green Bay, a lot.
Well, about the market, and that's one thing where, I can think I know what I'm talking about, but the market will teach me eventually, and I should listen.
Yeah.
So we find that, and that's one of the reasons why we like doing phase deals, is you learn about your tenancy, you learn about your customers, and without your customers, you don't have a business. And this is a business. And some people might not look at it that way, but it is. And so it's a service business, and you got to offer what people actually want to rent.
Well, and to that point, I would have been the first one to say, and I was adamant about it. I was wrong. Hate that when that happens, but I was wrong in terms of the kitchen in the 5th floor, for example. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. I mean it. It isn't used. And here's an amenity that would blow your mind. And everybody that looks at it goes, oh, this is gorgeous, this is cool. And it's empty.
That's one thing, I guess, maybe just to touch on, phase 1 specifically, we're looking at an affordable component to this.
Yes.
The 5th floor club room or 4th floor club room potentially that you're talking about, we have that in Green Bay, and it's a wonderful feature. But but I'm just thinking, we have to keep in mind who our customer is here as we look at designing spaces and trying to stay within the cost budget that we can live with, and that we can have customers that will pay. So I guess that's.
And there again drives our desire to provide an affordable component here. I mean, if we weren't looking at that, well, all of a sudden we can probably do a lot of things. Reducing density, maybe a greater amenity spend, but there again.
Well, let me just ask directly: is that a non-starter? Are you saying that you can't reduce density, or have you looked into it, or is it? It's kind of a blunt question, but.
I'm sorry, you cut out. What was the question?
Yeah. Is the consideration of lowering density, is that a consideration?
I don't think so. No. Unless you want to lose the affordable component.
Or some percentage of it, which, we've listened to the folks in Manoa. I have people that have talked to me about, geez, I've been in my house 35 years, 30 years. I don't have anywhere to move. Where am I going to go? I'm not ready to go into a senior center. Why don't you do something? Well, okay. We got people in Jeff's age group that are trying to buy their first house. Well, good luck. The affordability factor is real. Say nothing about the competition. And so there's 5 offers on these houses that are $350,000 and under. It's a dog eat dog right there. So to me, I think density is important to serve the community, and I think affordability is critical. Because there is this missing middle that is completely ignored. And that's where we said, look, boy, we could really do something nice here.
Yeah, and I was looking at the statistics of Monona the other day, and I think we're only 3.3 square miles. Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of seems to me that we don't really have a choice but to be a little bit more dense. I'm not sure where you can go pick off an acre or two around Monona to do multifamily redevelopment, condos or otherwise. And I just don't see where it is.
So, and that's our balance, that's our struggle. You can't be all things to all people. And try as we might, and we listen, we truly listen. And you run into the reality of affordability. I'm freaked out about is we ultimately, if we ever get approval for this, okay, what's interest rates look like by the time this happens? Where are we going? So that's a little bit of our drive for urgency. To your question, if you came to us and said, look, you got to cut your density by 20%, I would probably say we'd have to go.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm not throwing out a number. I am saying.
Giving you an example of, I don't know where.
Clear. You're making all good points and valid points, and I agree with them, certainly. As a commission member, I'm looking at other things outside of that. I'm looking at how a project fits into the community, what impacts it has for traffic and other nearby residents. It's not just about maximizing density for everything. And we have 2 other projects that we're currently working on that just made reductions in density. Like, it can happen in certain situations, and I don't know yours, and that's really not my job, is to understand the financials of this. I'm evaluating the GDP plan and the PIP plan and how that fits in the community based on how I think. So I appreciate the difficulties that come with making it a financially viable project and offering things like affordable housing. But I would just ask that you take my comments with kind of that perspective, that lens from where I'm coming from.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Sounds good.
All right. That was a hard one. I'm just going to take through a couple other things. I would agree with the comment about the canopy trees. I would look, I think there was a conflict with one of the street lights up towards Owen Road. So that needs to be looked at when you're placing those. Quick look here. I think I've touched on most everything, so I'll chime in later. Why don't you move on to the next person in the interest of time?
Okay. Great. Thanks, Rob. Christy?
Thank you. First, I just want to say, I want to thank you, Bert and Jeff, for, you have been really amenable with feedback, and especially concerns from the residents, and I just want to say thank you for that, and I appreciate that. I did meet with some residents yesterday on Anthony Place, and they brought up all kinds of things, and they always are great eyes on the ground there. And so a few things I noticed there. First off, I definitely think the evergreens on the western edge between the 3 individual apartment buildings is a great choice for screening there. I have some concerns because those 3 apartment buildings, I don't believe they have any green space whatsoever. And so I have some concerns about if there's children in there, them wanting to get into your beautiful courtyard space, which I wouldn't blame them. As a child, I would do that. It's lovely. So I was going to say you might want to consider a fence along that side, because I did not see a fence there. Just to reduce any conflict points. I did notice as well that there were about 12 of those cars parked. It looked like they were from those apartment buildings parked in the Village Lanes parking lot. And it looks like they don't have enough parking. So I do have some concerns a little about the parking being tight. They can park on the street on their side on Anthony Place, but there may not be enough parking there for them. So just putting it out there. One of the residents mentioned the massing on the corners of the western corners, and asked if you could step that in a little more so it's not quite so broad. But in what I saw, it looks like it is stepped in the corners. So I don't know if they saw that most recent plan or if it just wasn't enough for them, but I'm just putting it out there for you. Mm-hmm. I do agree with Chris that the green space you've created in your courtyard is really well done, and I think it's adequate. It looks fabulous. I want that. I want that in my yard. So I think it's great. A few other things. I heard Jeff say that, talk about the post office lease extension. When does the post office lease end? Just curious out of that.
July, coming up here in
July, okay.
5 months.
Okay, well, hopefully they will bite on that extension.
Yep.
Um,
They said they were going to.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they've been saying that since October,
Yeah.
so hopefully we'll get to it.
Yes, we're all pulling for you, I think. I do really appreciate your underground bike parking with the hook system. I think that's great. One other thing, sorry, circling back a little bit to the strip mall with the post office. Have the small businesses in there been notified about this project?
I don't think so. Well, some have, because they called them.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't gone and said. 'cause
We haven't gone door to door.
Again, back to my comment, at the time, we didn't know what the sentiment would be. Our first thought initially was the Village Lanes property proper, and then we came up with the notion of, well, why don't we try to integrate this and make it one really nice cohesive development and make it all fit. And so I don't know if they have been, I don't know. I mean, I didn't go door to door and say, hey, by the way.
Yeah, and in part of the process about the 2024 is there are existing leases in place, and that most of them expire in 2023 or 2024. And so, in a variety of reasons, people don't renew leases, a variety of reasons people go out of business. I mean, time will tell what people are going to end up doing there. But I can say pretty confidently, I mean, that center is not the most strong center in Dane County. So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
And the building looks pretty old, and I'm sure there's probably some functional issues there as well.
It's a money pit.
We're learning more every day. So.
Yeah.
None of you would want to own it.
Well, and I get your point too about not knowing what phase 2 holds for the future. I mean, like you said, that's 3 years out. The past 3 years, the world has changed dramatically. So maybe by then condo financing won't be seen as quite as volatile or risky, and
Yeah.
we'll see that come forward. That would be wonderful. I did want to just mention quickly, I think, and this is kind of general, maybe a point for Doug, our city planner, some of the residents on Anthony Place and around the corner on Owen said they did not get notifications of this. And so just letting you know that, I think, because, and so maybe we should talk about our notification process somewhat at some point. Because I know that happened on my block, and some people, they just are, it's such a sore spot for them that it really has made a challenge for the developers working there. Okay, going through. I did notice the streetlight locations because the residents mentioned that it's very dark on the corner of Anthony and Owen. And just thinking about this density and the number of people that may be walking in there, I know you'll have the sidewalk, which is great. But thinking, okay, so there's one sidewalk, one street lamp at the entrance of Monona Hills. And then there's one, so that's on the north side of Owen. And then there's another one on the south side of Owen, maybe a half a block beyond Anthony, half a block west. So I think you might have to think about putting, or the city will have to put a street lamp on the corner of Anthony and Owen, possibly. Just throwing it out there. Yep, I think that mainly covers it. I think that covers it. Otherwise, I mean, I think the density is high. I think that can work in this area as long as the parking is adequate. And I think, you've got a lot of underground parking, which is great. And like you said, phase 2 is still kind of a TBD. So if you run into parking challenges, maybe at that point it can be tweaked to accommodate you with parking there.
Thank you, Christine. Corrine?
Yeah. I like the way it looks. I like the wood however you described the wood look to the new element on the front of it. I also have a lot of comments that are probably a mixture of things. But as far as the commercial, I was really happy to see that increase in the proposed commercial use. I think that's wonderful. And I did like seeing that Doug had a conversation with you about having a traffic study, a traffic impact study. I do think, I don't know, he can advise you on how to go about doing that, but there are a lot of concerns, and we heard a lot of concerns at the last meeting about that, and so that might just help alleviate some of the concerns about how this proposed development would.
Yeah, we engaged our traffic engineer to look at a traffic impact analysis last week. So we should have those findings hopefully a week from Friday.
Okay. I think that'll be good information for the neighborhood. Thinking about the location and the relationship of the site to the other properties, there's the access path that leads from this property to the senior center, and that was going to be something that stays functional, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the walkway.
Yep. I was wondering if there should also be something that goes to the Fragonis and Silver Eagle and that area, because there's sort of a retaining wall. I mean, there's a sidewalk, but people are going to cut through that back lawn area.
Can I respond to something here?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I have heard the current tenants do not enjoy for a second the customers from Silver Eagle walking over and through that property. It's intimidating to them. They don't like it. People have had a few drinks, and it's just an awkward environment. We've met with Gary Fragoni. Gary loved our plan, was very supportive of it.
But he did say, "Don't touch my rock wall."
Okay.
Very clear. And
so that was explicitly said.
Yeah, leave it alone. Well, that was
Fair enough.
one of the first things he said was, "What are you going to do with the rock wall?"
I think he technically called it.
Yeah, he did. And I said,
Well, I mean, you can walk around. There's a sidewalk. I
appreciate your comments because right now, I would have never even thought about the Silver Eagle thing. And then we started talking to the people there, and they were like, the previous owner put that walkway in there, and he wanted to build stairs to have them come down, and they don't like it at all. And so that's one of the first things we heard when we bought the strip center. So,
okay.
I don't know.
As far as the green space debate, I don't love the turf, but I mean, you have more experience with that. It's not a professional bocce court, so I feel like people can play in lawn. They don't need the flat turf, but
if I could just maybe weigh in on that. We went round and round about that because I don't love turf either, and it's kind of expensive. But Kevin and the engineering folks basically decided it's going to be very difficult to get grass to grow over the underground parking garage area. So that's how we ended up with the turf. So, anybody else?
Okay.
We did do that. I argued for grass. We did do that when we built the condominiums on Femright Drive, the Woodlands, and there's a courtyard over that grass. And it's really nice, but it was a big deal to get the right depth, to have enough soils, and then it leaked, and it was a problem. And so I gave in and said, okay. And so it's just kind of a longer term solution. Again, if I had it my way, and it would be grass, but it's not the right application of hope.
So the consideration about the second plaza area for phase 2, I know you don't really know what's going to be able to happen in that space, but I think I guess I'm wondering if there could be a different kind of amenity potentially offered, and I know you don't know that yet, but if you could think about, Rob had mentioned maybe doing some kind of an outdoor plaza, that would be like a different kind of amenity on that second building, and then maybe you could offer some maybe community garden type of a thing, and that would actually give you some different kind of green space in that area. And they can walk across if they want to use that other plaza area. So it's just something to consider as you're thinking about what other types of amenities you can offer to people in this development.
Okay.
The ADA parking, it's on the south side, but the elevators are more on it's kind of far. If they're parking all the way on the south side and they're entering the building there, and they need to get up to their apartment, and they have a mobility concern, I wonder if that's a long way for them to go to get to the elevator.
Are you talking about the surface ADA parking or the underground?
The surface.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it located immediately adjacent to each of the entry doors. The parallel parking along that private drive is not conducive to ADA parking, as you can appreciate, because they need an 8-foot concrete pathway along the side of their vehicle, and that would be in the middle of the pavement, or we'd have to eliminate the grass on the other side. So we do have it located as close as we can to the main entry, but there are accessible entry points at both ends, so a handicapped resident can get in the building and then simply just go down the hallway to get to the elevator.
Okay, well, it's just a consideration. I don't know if you'd be able to, if you do ADA designs in your design, and maybe those could be closer to that end of the building on the first floor.
That's a good point, yes. The ADA units could be located closer to those access entry points.
Yeah. And let's see. I think Christy's right about the parking, that people from the other buildings definitely park there. When I drive by there in the morning, there's a lot of cars parked there, and there's not a functional business right now. So they're parking there from somewhere. I mean, that's their parking spot. So that is something to consider. Maybe it's just like you get resident permits, and people who live there get a permit on their window, and you can tell that they are meant to be there. So, and I think I also love the bike racks in the parking stall. That's awesome. It's a great idea.
They've been a real big hit in Green Bay, I'll tell you. We've had to continuously add them, and they're wonderful.
Well, I never had a place to put my bike when I lived in an apartment. So what a great solution.
I know that Jeff Gillis probably wouldn't agree because he has to install them, but because they're hard. They go into that cement, and they're not.
Well,
they're there forever.
And then the only other comment that I had, I like where the post office is because it's like closer to everything, but you have the drive, like the truck entrance is on the other side, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of post office truck traffic. So would it make sense to flip the post office and the other commercial?
Maybe Kevin can talk about that a little bit, but what I observe, at least when I tried to watch the post office folks, they pick up the boxes and put them into like a laundry cart, for lack of a better term, and they kind of wheel them into the facility, and then they unload them through the back of the property. So we envisioned that they would unload the boxes manually and then move the mail to the actual site and then load it from the site. And that's why we have this loading area outside of where the bike racks are, that the mail truck would actually park there, and that's where they would load their mail truck. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something to consider. It's probably beyond just a comment for now, but
Sure.
details for later. So,
Sounds good.
All right, that's it.
Thank you, Corinne. Brian?
All right, thanks for bearing with me. I think I'll start off with the density because that seems to be kind of the hot topic of the night. I just want to point out that Heritage, right across the street, I asked earlier, is at 48% density. And so when we look at our neighboring property, we're at a very consistent rate of density as this proposal. And we've talked about before that parking often dictates if we have a density issue, and I think here we're kind of probably towards the top end of that density. At the same time, I think it's appropriate given the massing and the density of the two properties to the north and to the south of this property. And I'll start with that part. Next is lot coverage and green space. I agree with earlier comments that the back patio area, as well as other landscaping efforts, I think exceeds and meets that issue that we're addressing. As it relates to the traffic impact study, I agree. It's going to be desired at some point anyways. We know that we've heard feedback from others that there's concerns about the traffic impact of this many dwelling units in this area. And I know there have been comments at previous pre-hearing conferences about the previous business that was there, and the number of visitors to that business was likely a higher impact on the neighborhood than this will be. But I think it's important for us to encourage you to follow through with that traffic study.
We will. We've like Jeff said, we did engage that, and that's
awesome.
Underway. So thank
Perfect.
you.
Let's see. It hasn't been highlighted as much from our questions tonight, but I am extremely pleased of the commitment to the affordable housing component in phase one. I understand phase two is, down the road. We don't know what that will hold, but we know that we have limited area for growth, and when we do infill projects, it's very difficult for us to also add in a layer of affordability, and not only are you guys taking that on, I think you're taking on with a significant level. So I know you've heard some of us talk about that previously, that we appreciate it, and just want to make sure that you hear that again tonight. Parking, we'll address many of those items. Let's see, Chris has talked about the appreciation of the increase in the brick. I know I talked about that last time you were here. You almost made it to the top on those two areas that I was pointing out, pulling it up. Although the panels that you have up above, I think, still make it look like a nice building. But if there's any other areas that we can increase in brick, it would definitely be appreciated. But I definitely have seen the incorporation of the feedback from our last time here. So it's looking like a very nice building right now.
Thank you. Thanks.
I've already talked there.
Oh, you all set, Ryan?
Just looking at windows.
Okay. So I just have a couple of things, Jeff and Bert. I would echo a lot of what other people have said. I'm still a little concerned about density, but I would not say that's a deal breaker. And again, I'm going to mix GDP and PIP, as others have done a little bit tonight. Thank you for the traffic study. Thank you for the work overall. I think it's looking better. It's really hard for me to embrace a new flat roof building without seeing solar on it. So at the very least, I'd like to see a roughing out of solar. And I would say also that in terms of the overall parking, the same would apply for roughing out for EV stations. Because I can tell you, just even in terms of personal anecdote, that I've got three friends that have gotten electric cars recently, and their biggest hassle has been finding a place to plug in, including at the MGE station on Wash. So, you know, it's going to be a reality. I mean, electric vehicles are here, so so you should definitely include that. I understand what you're saying about not knowing in phase 2 what your amenities are going to be because we're so far out from that. And yet, as Chris pointed out, this is, if we're really thinking about it, GDP, you know, having some idea of what you're going to do there. Even if when you come back with a PIP 2 years from now, you need to make a case for something else because whatever you created isn't used anymore. Or, you know, you have data to the contrary. It's not like this group wouldn't listen to it, but I think we need to have more of a sense of what you think you would do on building number 2 in terms of amenities, because, you know, right now I'm just seeing all those units in unit 2, and, you know, if I've got a plate of hamburgers and I want to grill, I'm going to walk from the fourth, I'm going to walk or get on an elevator on the 4th floor of building number 2 with a plate of burgers, and I'm going to go down 4 flights
and drop them in the elevator
to a building, out to a grill on the other side. You know, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from with that.
You know,
yeah.
So I think that, you know, having a better idea, recognizing again that when you get to that building point, we may need to see some adjustments would be helpful. And otherwise, and then the other thing was, Jeff, you mentioned that there were several buildings in the area that had the wood siding specifically that you guys were using, or Kevin mentioned it, one of the two.
Yeah, it was Kevin, and maybe he can weigh in on that.
Yeah, if you could, Kevin, even if you could share an address or two with Doug. I think we've all experienced good composite siding and not so good composite siding. And so being able to physically see, besides a sample of it, which we can't see obviously on Zoom, but, you know, kind of some buildings where that same product has been used might be helpful for some of us.
You're talking about the wood siding, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
The composite, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can do that.
That'd be great. Okay, so I have roughing out for EV, solar at a minimum, siding. Yeah, no, I think that's it. Anything else? Chris?
Thanks. Number one, unsolicited comment. I think really you or Christy should always go last. You two do such a nice job of saying the same thing, but delivering it so nice. It comes out so much better. Just listening to the comments, a couple things. Bert and Jeff, I think it would help with the neighbors if you actually had a plan that showed the existing Village Lanes building overlaying on your current site, because you are so much further away from all those apartments. I mean, your existing building is just about on the property line. And if they saw, you know, if I was them and I thought I was going to go right where that building is at 4 stories, it would look like a lot. But as far back as you are, I think it'd be better. It'll be less obstructive to the neighbors. I would think they would like it better, but it's not clear on any of your plans. You have to go between plans. I think that would be a great illustrative thing to show to the neighbors or have on your plans if they look it up on our website and see that, oh, wow, this, you know, all of a sudden I've got 50 more feet of green space between me and that building. That makes a big difference. At least it would to me. The turf debate, I would be on the side of turf. Sorry, Bert, but there's so much foot traffic there and so much going on. You'll never keep grass growing in a spot like that. Plus, you don't want to inject more water than you have to on top of that deck. And then, lastly, I've learned. I have a good friend that has MS, and he's in some advanced stages. He's clearly in a wheelchair and things anymore. And I've learned a lot about ADA parking from him. And it's a little counter to the way we always do it. He said, just please don't put my stalls right at the easiest place, because he said anybody that can get a handicap stall will take that place. He said, I have to have that 8-foot path. I have to unload with my wheelchair, and I can't do it. So where it's counterintuitive, it seems to me that these two stalls, if somebody knows they're there on the back of the building on the south side, they'll be open a lot of the time. People won't take them. They're not as convenient. And for him, he would love that, because he says, I can never find somewhere to unload my wheelchair, which was like an epiphany for me, thinking, man, I'm going to do a good thing, and I'm not when I put them right in the very front, because a lot of people that might not need it take those stalls. So it's just a reinforcement for the way you have it planned. I think it is prudent, and I think trying to get it with the parallel parking would just destroy a lot right in front of that building. And really where we're trying to soften it up a little bit, where the least amount of green space, we'd be taking it away. So just a comment on the ADA. Thank you.
I will say, I do appreciate your comment there regarding showing the neighbors the setback. When Bill Nolker, who owns an adjacent property, was very curious and came into our office and said, I want to see what do you got going on? And we showed it to him, and he said, I love it. This is great. Do you want me to come and speak in behalf of it? And we said, no, we don't want to turn it into some big brouhaha, but we appreciate that. And you are right. When you get to see the depth and the setback, it is substantial. And so, thank you.
Anything else, Christy?
Yeah, I have to second the turf, and I think of number one, the traffic and the mowing, like the idea of not having that needing mowing, and then Alder Moore mentioned, since she mentioned the EV roughing in for EV, I was thinking for your underground garage, making sure you have accommodations to charge electric bicycles. Because those have become incredibly popular.
Great idea.
Huge number of sales the last year, and people are using them in place of cars. And so it could help alleviate your parking issue, because someone might not need a car and they'll shift to an an electric bike.
Yeah, thanks. That makes good sense.
You bet.
Anything else? We good? Do you guys feel like you got enough direction from us this evening?
Oh, yeah.
You feel like you got clear direction from us this evening? Not enough, but do you think you got clear direction from us this evening?
Yes.
What it's all about.
Thank you. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and we'll close the pre-hearing conference.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks again. Number 5, E, public hearing on the request by Populance LLC for consideration of a zoning permit for new construction at 6501 Bridge Road, case number 2-006-2021. Chris, welcome back.
Hi. So we can, Doug, can you bring up the slides? Would this be the appropriate time to do that? Okay, so here's evolution of where we are before you tonight. It's the site at 6501 Bridge Road. Doug, can you skip to the next one? The project concept is virtually unchanged. We're still reacting to the world that we have now. We still want to keep the major components. We've done a lot of fine tuning on the program and the parking and some of the site usage. So we want to talk about that a little bit tonight. Doug, if you want to go to the next one. So one of the major things that is not in the project anymore is we did decide to eliminate the car share program that we had discussed at length last year. We still think it's the right thing to do, but for this particular project, we were not able to get the data that made us comfortable to present to the Plan Commission and the council. So it's, it was a very difficult decision to eliminate that. Again, to emphasize, we do think that's the direction that everything is going, but unfortunately for this project, we felt that the timing was just not right for it. We did take a look at the unit mix and number of units. There was a lot of discussion internally, and I know at previous times that we were before this body, about what was happening on the ground floor. How are we going to determine our mix of live, work, and commercial space, and what were those percentages going to end up being? So as of the last couple months, what we're finding is a very, very strong demand for the live work units and a much lower demand for the dedicated commercial. So right now we have 16 live work units and 1 dedicated commercial space that would be on the Bridge Road side, and that's about 3,000 square feet plus or minus. Now, working forward from that, we took a look at the units, the rental units on the 3rd and 4th floor, the live work units, and the commercial space are pretty firm parking counts in there. I have some additional information on another live work project that we're doing in Madison and the users that have purchased those and how they're embracing the concept in a way that really frankly is meeting our expectations. We were hoping that people would really get into this, and they have been. So that's encouraging for us, and I just wanted to share a couple other things with you on that and those people that we're finding. We did have some discussions with Public Works, and the Public Works are the civil consultant for the city of Monona about the street parking, the existing rights of way, and we had proposed originally moving some, creating some, or dedicating some right of way back to the city. And as a result of those discussions, it doesn't appear as though we would be touching any of those. There was a discussion again at this body and also with Public Works about the benefits or drawbacks of angled pull-in parking versus parallel parking, and I think it was decided both in discussions here and with Public Works that parallel parking was the desired route to go for that. We have some additional unit details just in general that we would like to share. And we've just been getting some great feedback. We did secure a management company, and we've been getting some great feedback from them on how we're going to operate this. We have some very specific ideas on how we want this to be operated, and we want to ensure that we have the right partner to pull that off. So, Doug, we skip to the next one. Okay, so site access, again, this is virtually unchanged. We still have our critical pedestrian points along Bridge and Broadway. We have that singular parking entry that goes to the underground parking, providing sidewalks along Bridge Road and the frontage road. As long as we're on this page, just a quick note from One City. Where their sign is located, that is outside the view corridor where any parallel street parking would be proposed for our project. So that would be to the east another 60 feet or so that there would not be a conflict with any potential parking along there. Well, any potential, let's say, marked parking. I suppose somebody could park there, but it wouldn't be legal. As part of the live work, as discussed, we would have multiple entry points into and out of each one of the live work places. And you can see the 3 boxes that are empty, that would be the dedicated commercial space. That could be 3 spaces, could be combined into 1. Again, we've had a fair amount of interest in it in that location. For a commercial user, we have not we just haven't pulled the trigger with anybody yet, or really gotten to a point where we can seriously engage with them. Let's see. We'd also have bike parking. I think from the previous applicant, those were all great points about bike parking. Not only in the underground stall, which we always do, and I'm always amazed how popular that is to hang up your bike right in front of your stall. So that's always been kind of a standard for us. Christy's point about the electric bike charging, we have sort of courtesy outlets spread throughout the parking area, but also at every designated parking stall or a bike parking area, there would be the ability to charge bikes there as well. We have engaged with B-Cycle as well. We had some ideas again when we were working with the transportation demand system about having a different type of program. We do like obviously what B-Cycle is doing, and we would definitely like to stay engaged with them for potential use on there, and we'd also really like to explore the idea of setting up this program so that residents would either have a severely discounted or free opportunity to use these bikes. And again, we're not quite sure if we can offer a fleet of electric bikes as well, just for the residents' use. So that's all something that we really want to explore. I think you guys should know by now, after all my yakking here, that we're really trying hard to find some alternate transportation solutions. And even though we're going in a little bit different direction, we still haven't given up on that overall goal. Let's skip to the next one, Doug. Okay, so the live-work units are getting a lot more developed. You can see that the unit counts here, how we're breaking these out. We're comfortable with this number, but more importantly, it fits well within the parking demands and requirements that I know have been a discussion point for some time here. Now, I just want to emphasize that the apartments and the live work are all able to be parked underground with a small surplus of stalls. And I think in the next slide there, Doug, we can kind of walk through what we're seeing for the live work. Now the ones we have right now, there's a lobbyist, attorney, and then a couple work from home people, and it's just been really interesting. Now we have another project that's in development right now where we've got 12 live work units, and we're already starting to get interest on that, and we literally have, I've got 5 lines on paper. But the benefits to these people that are interested in it, I know we've talked about this at previous meetings, but over the past few months, we're just seeing more and more desire for a product like this, and it helps it helps us define or assist to define what's going to happen on that floor, on that ground level floor. It gives the unit owners a great amount of exposure. Now, these are not going to be heavy use businesses typically. What we're finding is they're going to be appointment only, maybe 1 or 2 employees tops. These are more areas where if you're not working from home for an established company, you have the opportunity to start and or continue to manage your own business. The comments we're getting back, again, it's just been it's focused a lot on hey, I can build equity. I don't have to worry about paying rent or getting jammed on rent. I don't have to, keep throwing away money on that. I've got more stability. I've got more flexibility, and I don't have a commute. So, there's all all these positives in doing this, which again, I know we've talked about, but it just gets stronger and stronger. We can skip to the next one. And so right now, we already have one person that's extremely interested. He's an insurance person or insurance agent. He wants to run his own office and live above. It's just the absolute classic buyer that we're looking for. And we definitely are pursuing a very specific group of people who will understand and take advantage of this. And we think that for the number of units, we have more than sufficient pool of people to pick from here. I think we can be, fairly selective, but we're finding probably 30% are just work from home people. A lot of programmers, a lot of people who will have occasional meetings in the office, but who definitely want or need that separate workspace. So it has been really interesting to go through the machinations of finding who the demographics are of this particular product, and it's been great, frankly. Okay, skip to the next one, Doug. Sorry. So here we go. You guys have seen this. This is our existing conditions along Bridge and the frontage road and those very wide right-of-ways. Let's get to the next one. And then we can see we're parking 61 stalls underneath. We've got 4 stalls along Bridge Road for the parallel parking, and then along the frontage road, we've got some additional parallel stalls there. Still maintains the drive aisles. It also accomplishes the traffic calming that we wanted to do from day one. Not only to benefit our project, but also to benefit the school and traffic. We have been talking to neighboring businesses, and then Nick and Vasco, obviously, have they noticed any difference in traffic? And there just hasn't been anything, or it's just it's been consistent with one city's traffic study, and there's not been any alarms raised about that. Again, parallel parking. We had originally thought that there could be a potential for that angled nose-in parking, but that's not necessarily going to work. And then we had an extra lane in there for Bridge Road. I think we had an extra entry lane, and in discussion with Public Works, it was 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out would be sufficient for Bridge Road. So that would essentially then involve a restriping of Bridge Road and not necessarily any dedications of the right-of-way. We are putting a multi-use bike and pedestrian path along Bridge Road. And then skip to the next one. So again, we're parking 61 stalls underground. We had 56 for total residential stalls required based on our unit mix. Total commercial stalls, now that includes the work portion of the live work and then the 3,000 square foot dedicated commercial space. We are asking for a reduction for the workspace from 1 stall for every 300 square feet to 1 stall to 400 square feet based on the low intensity uses. And then 11 stalls for the commercial space. So we've got all the residential parked underground with a surplus that we can designate to either a commercial user if needed. And then we're providing the other stalls on the street. And then we do have an opportunity, which I know was discussed, for an additional 7 stalls on grade. You can see kind of in the salmon color, yeah, right there, Doug. We could have an additional 7 stalls in that area. We would lose one of the parallel stalls for the curb cut, but there again is a potential for that, for overflow parking in the future that could accommodate additional parking. Now, again, yep, nope, that's good, Doug. So once we started actually looking at the units and figuring out what people are looking for, it's just flexible multi-use spaces for these apartments and the live-work residential portion as well. Now, the work portion is going to be wide open. They can do whatever they want in there to effectively run their business. But at least for the residential portion, we all know what's going on here. There is a housing shortage. We don't think that doing the same thing over and over is necessarily the best solution to this. We want to give people an opportunity to really engage and embrace where they're living. And one of the ideas that we had here was emphasize, hey, we're getting natural light in here, we're getting sound control, we're getting an ability to move and make these spaces flexible. And particularly for the people who don't want a live workspace, can we still replicate that concept in a way that you could open up you could have a wide open unit, or you can separate it out in several different ways to have a dedicated office, if needed. So let's skip to the next one, Doug. So we're still keeping with our sustainability goals here. We're in process with PACE still for geothermal and some of the rechargeable elements, mass timber floor decks. We've got, again, a lot of natural lighting and then just a hyper efficient use of these materials. And we're really excited to offer this. I hate saying offer this product because we think of it as a little more than that. A space like this can really enhance the way that people live, and we want to design these around people and just make sure that all the spaces are complementing the way that people live, and having that flexibility to configure these spaces in a multitude of different ways is something that we're really excited about, and something that we're getting some pretty substantial feedback on, positive feedback. And again, this is just a rehash of one of the previous ones, but you can see how the uses are broken out here, with the TN being the commercial live work, and then residential above it. So we'd have a 4-story portion right on the corner, and then stepping down to the 3 stories, stepping down to the 2-story live work. Again, having the site permeability and all of that exposure and access we feel is critically important, and then also having the ability to live in a little bit different way in the residential portion we think is critical as well. Now we do understand that the street parking has been discussed. We're comfortable. Obviously we want some additional feedback on that, but we do feel that based on the uses and based on the limited use of the live work, that these are effective solutions for this particular site. So more than happy to answer any questions if anyone needs any more information. I'm right here.
I think you're on mute, Nancy.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that came tonight to speak on the public hearing of this particular development? Looks like we've lost our the rest of our audience this evening. So, all right, that being the case, I'll close the public hearing and go to 5F, which is the pre-hearing conference on the request by Confluence LLC for consideration of a zoning permit for new construction at 6501 Bridge Road, case number 2-006-2021. Chris, I would just say I would never be able to have a glass door on my bedroom, okay? One of those photos. in your, I mean, I appreciate the flexibility, but, no, but beyond that, let's see, who would like to start? Brian, do you want to start this time?
I don't know if Doug has had a chance to go.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Doug. I spaced again. Go ahead.
No, not a problem. Just a couple of things for the process, really more than anything to call out. As this is a pre-hearing, the applicant is looking to finalize plans and come forward for maybe more of a formal consideration. You know, if feedback tonight is positive. So it's a 4-story mixed-use building with a total of 46 residential units, including the live-work units themselves, as well as some traditional commercial. As mentioned, those numbers have been firmed up since the previous discussions, which will allow for more discussion of the parking and sort of having final numbers with that. The property is in the Community Design District, the CDD, which allows for a compatible mix of residential, commercial, industrial, or open space uses that realize the goal of the comp plan. The comprehensive plan has this designated as commercial in both the current and future land use maps. One thing that I did want to call out was with regards to the live work units themselves. The applicant has asked if they could be considered as both for sale in sort of a condo product as well as for rent. And so maybe that's just something that the commission chooses to discuss, how that, if at all, that changes anything. The units themselves range from studio through to 2-bedroom. 3250 square feet of traditional commercial with just over 8,000 square feet of workspace, obviously associated with the live work units. And the applicant already ran through kind of the expected users there with another local project that they have done. The ground floor plaza space, offers a lot of permeability to the site. There's a little bit more detail that was included in the plans of the landscaping, the programming, and sort of how that would work. Also, the green space, the landscaping plan was sort of a high-level landscaping plan was provided, which showed what was envisioned, and obviously a portion of that may be impacted by the surface parking. But that's a sort of fallback that has been mentioned or asked of in the past. The parking analysis is included in the staff report. The main piece there being the request from the applicant for the just over 8,000 square feet of workspace of the live work to be assessed at one stall per 400 square feet rather than 1 per 300, as would be typical for a commercial office type space. If that is the case, there would be a 3-stall surplus accounting for the on-site or the adjacent parallel parking and things like that. If it were not and it was assessed at 1 per 300, there would be a 4-stall deficit. A couple of the alternative transportation methods have also been outlined, the bike racks that are available both underground and throughout the plaza, as well as the B-cycle. And in the past, there had been discussion of the adjacent bus stop as well, there on West Broadway, possibly, adding a shelter or something like that and really formalizing that. So that may be something to discuss as well. That's it from my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Again, my apologies. It's easy. We are meeting. Brian,
no problem.
Would you like to go?
Yeah, I'm good to go. Actually, I don't have a whole lot to say. I think this is a great rendition of this proposal. I understand the disappointment of the rideshare program not being part of it.
although it might not be a part of the proposal, that doesn't disallow that to be part of a project forthgoing. I think it just comes into the consideration as it addresses parking issues, and you've covered parking issues, I think, quite well. With the idea of the request for the change in the 1 to 400 versus the 1 to 300 square feet, I think that's something for us to think about and consider. I'm not sure what kind of precedent that might set, so I'd like to think a little bit about how we might think about that, and I'm curious what other commission members say regarding that question, because I'm not sure it's come up in the city before. I'm not sure that we have any other live work scenarios to compare it to, so I think it's something worthy for us to discuss. Overall, I think the project's coming along very nicely, actually. I like the increase of the connection with the sustainability with the geothermal aspect. I think you've addressed other transportation pieces, which is fine. Site circulation seems okay. The architecture and massing, in my opinion, looks wonderful. I don't have concerns about any of the other parts at this point. That's all I have.
Good. Thank you, Brian. Maureen.
Yeah, I turn my heater off. I really like the way it looks as well. Although I did read in there about the, metal seems to be the primary component, and I know that's not what we're talking about today, but that'll be something to consider. I really like the way that you've addressed the parking on the street. I do have some parking concerns, and I think, like Brian said, having some consideration for making that exception, I think is something we're going to have to consider, because I'm wondering, your live work units, they show, I know they're just renderings, but they show like computer carrels where there's multiple computers and a large conference work table. And if these are primarily sole proprietors who are, having customers come in to see them, the way that those workspaces are at least shown, it looks like you might have somebody who has other employees that are working there as well. And so I guess I was like, if that's the case, then it's not just someone walking downstairs to go to work, but they have employees that are coming and needing to park as well as their customers. And then, if there's any visitors that want to come and visit any of the residents living there, or if the commercial space, without knowing what's going to be there, it's hard. It looked like you said it looked like it was you're going to build it so it could be 3, or it could be 1, or it could be 1, or 2, depending on the size that the commercial entity needs. You could break it up. Well, I don't know what kind of a business you've been talking to, so that could have an impact on the amount of parking that's needed as well. If it's a business that gets a lot of traffic that would need to be driving there, I don't know what that would be. But so I guess I have some concerns about that. I also am wondering if you would need more than 1 drop-off and 1 pickup. People do use the Uber, Lyft, quite a bit. So even just having 2, I think, would be a really good, especially if you have all those businesses there. So, people may take the bus, but that's not set in stone either. So, I think the parking is still going to be potentially an issue, just given all those other considerations that are hard to know right now. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I'm wondering, can you explain a little bit more about the outdoor space? There's no balconies, which I brought up at another project, and was told that that's not necessarily where people are going these days with their design. So. But there's the plaza, which is great. I like the way that looks, and it really gives a really great spot to sit. But if there are businesses and people are walking through, then it's not really like maybe that relaxing. having some place that might be a little bit quieter without as much foot traffic might be good for the residents. So do you have plans for how you're going to be able to provide that?
Yeah, so on the south side of the site, we do have an area that would be landscaped, would have benches, seating areas, and electric grills out there as well. So there would be an opportunity for a communal space on the south side of the site.
Was that shown and I just missed it?
So right now there's a big red box over it because that's where the overflow parking would potentially go as well. So so we're trying to utilize this again most efficiently. There's another potential to place some community areas on the west side of the site. It gets a little awkward, a little bit of a hike, and then we would also have some rooftop space on the 3-story area as well for use, but for residents only.
Yeah, that would be good, I think, just to have some place where they could sit outside and not be where there's businesses and other people walking through. So, and then you're asking about for sale versus for rent. So the 16 units are what you're asking about as for sale, and then the rest of them would be rental?
At this point, yeah. So the lender is, I know the previous applicant had talked about the difficulty in getting condos financed, and maybe for 180 condos, yeah, that would be the case. But for this amount, we don't have necessarily any issues with that. But one thing that we don't want is to have those be empty for any period of time. And so we would like to have that flexibility to offer them for rent and sales simultaneously, just so we can get the activity at that level.
Mm-hmm. How would the management company be able to work with those who own their units? I remember at one of our earlier conversations we had discussed how we would make sure that those work units were not just used as like an extra den for the people. We wanted to make sure that was a commercial space that was available, but if somebody owns that property, how does the management company work with them to make sure that stays that way?
That would be a deed restriction on the property and a condition of the sale, yeah.
Okay. Learning all these things about about that. So, okay. I think that's all I have for now.
Great, thank you, Corinne. Actually, I'm just going to, Chris, if I could follow up on that question around the ownership, because I noticed that when you put up the slide on live-work concept, there actually was a San Diego-based buyer that you referenced on your slide. Mm-hmm. Where you said it was going to be used for commercial and then personal use when they were in town. In other words, they don't live here.
So
in that case, are they subletting the commercial space to somebody else?
So he wants to buy it, and then he's going to move here and work remotely. So his wife is going to stay in San Diego. He's going to be here using the space, and then having it when his wife comes here as well.
Okay. Okay, so it's not a scenario where somebody is subletting something they've already leased from you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Chris, go ahead.
I'm getting confused tonight. Which Chris, you talking to this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Mr. Homburg, please.
Oh, please no. Okay, since we're talking about it, the condo issue. I don't believe as a municipality we have the ability to keep you from renting out a condo that you own. So if you were to make this entire thing condos and you owned it all until you sell a unit, I think it's your prerogative whether you sublet that and rent that out, or if, I mean, I know a lot of people own homes in Minnesota that they rent out. So I'm not aware of an ordinance that we have that would not allow you to rent out your property that you own, as long as it's you can't put 3 families in one little unit or something like that. Because one of my questions was, I like the fact that you're looking at geothermal, but you almost, even if it's no matter what it is, you have to have a condo association, because somehow you're going to have to spread that cost out amongst all the units. And if you have some condo units, some apartments, you're going to, I mean, that's up to you, but you have some way to portion out the cost of the heat and anything you generate that's communal, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, but and in terms of having the association control the live work, regardless of how that's proportioned out, I don't think we're necessarily nervous about breaking any ordinances, but we just wanted to be transparent with you guys up front about
I appreciate that, and I have confidence. We talked about making sure, Corrine brought it up too, that the lower level, the first floor, remains some type of work for the live work portion, and you said you're quite confident you can come up with some deed restriction that would be acceptable, so we can do that. One thing I see on your plans, I don't think you have enough maneuvering room in your underground parking. On the north side, you've only got a 12-foot lane there, and I just don't see how that's going to be efficient or effective for vehicles under there to be able to make that corner and get through there when you're only turning from a 24, and certainly not two-way traffic. I see that as being a pinch point. So what I'm really saying is those 2 stalls you show past the last set of columns probably can't be there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, sorry.
There's this delay. That's what I hate about these Zoom meetings. When we're in person, we get this. You can go back and forth with the Zoom. There's a delay, and it's just like, is it my turn to talk? So I'm with you. You can respond to that first. Well, let me finish. On the south side, you got a 12-foot lane, and I see that. Okay, that's more of an escape lane. That last car stall can't make it out the other way. You'd have to get out that way, and you could always sign the underground parking, so you'd have to go straight when they come in, and that's only an exit for that other whole area of parking. I can see that working. I just don't see it working on the north end. You've already got tight stalls to begin with, and I know a lot of underground parking, they get a little tighter. These are a little tighter, so maybe you want to respond to it now.
Yeah, so the intent was to go counterclockwise around, or anti-clockwise, around the underground parking area. So we understand that that's we're going from we've got that 24-foot drive aisle because because that's double loaded for the parking, but to actually make that left turn to go from 24 to 12, as long as it was one way, we felt that was sufficient. But we'll definitely take a closer look at that as well.
Take a look. If it's one way, we'd have to take another look if that can work. And I've counted 3 times. I'm miscounting. And I thought if you lost those 2 stalls, you'd still have 60. You show 61, so I'm off one somewhere. I assume that one that's marked on the very south end that's beyond that row, that's a line that didn't belong there, because you need that to get back out one-way traffic.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at that, Chris.
Okay. Parking, since I'm talking about parking, it would be a deal breaker if you didn't have the parking on the roads, because we need to have parking, surface parking for all those businesses, walk-ups, whatever. If the Public Works has looked at it, of course, they will have to approve it, but once they've looked at it, I think it's a great alternative. And when I look at your parking numbers, because we have a very good reason for just tweaking our parking requirements. We wouldn't need to go to 400. We go to, because of the live work arrangement, we'll go to 300, 1 stall per 350 square feet, and you meet it. And I think that's a reasonable accommodation when we're talking about at least some of these people are going to live right above their shops. And that's at least 1 car you've taken out. If you got 16 units, goodness, at least 6, 7, 8 cars must be taken out. It's another way to rationalize it. So I think to go to the 1 stall per 350, Doug, I see that as being reasonable, and that would hit where you're at right now. But of course, it's critical that you have the street parking to be able to make this thing work. Again, I started out going right into details because that's what I do, but overview. I'm really, every time I see this, I'm warming to it more. I think it's a really unique and interesting, and I think it's an incredibly popular option for people. And that you've solved your parking problem, and I want to caveat that too. We don't allow property owners to solve their parking problems by parking out in the street. We just don't. And it's in our ordinance. In your case, I don't see who else would ever park in that street. There's nobody else to park in the road where you're looking to use the parking. So I think in this case, we have a reasonable ability to say, yeah, that's okay here, because who else is going to park there? You're the only person there, other than the DiMaggios and the childcare, and then they wouldn't come across and park in that part of the street. So I think as far as parking, as much as I thought you wouldn't make this work because you'll never hit parking, I think you've made it work, and I think it's reasonable things for us to accept as far as the parking goes, and I think that was really important for this project.
Can I make a quick comment?
Absolutely.
So to that point, when we started looking at this, we started with parking and started working our way out, right? And when we saw those huge rights of way on the Broadway and Bridge Road, and spending some time out there and seeing the minimal amount of traffic, that's where we thought, hey, you know what? It's probably worth talking to you guys about this, because let's use this and let's try to make this project a little better by using what you guys have already provided. So we're very appreciative of you guys understanding that and really making this as efficient as possible. So I really do appreciate that feedback.
I think that's great. Just make sure Public Works agrees, because we need their approval to do this.
Yep.
And when we built that area, we had totally different plans. I mean, when we built that, we thought we'd be going to the east. I mean, at that point, people were filling up those areas. The wetland fills were allowed. This was a long time ago. And you can see how the road's built to the east. It's built for traffic, and it was built the same way to the west. And their Angle Street was the frontage road for Broadway. And since then, when WPS redeveloped their campus, that's when Angle Street was cut off and became a local street for them. Otherwise, it was the major I would say, frontage road that went all the way down to the entire Southtown area. So we anticipated a lot of traffic on that road, and that's why those road widths are there. So I think this is a great reuse of some impervious that probably isn't getting used a lot. Every time we talk, I mention this. I know you got it covered, but I'm going to mention it again. You don't show it on the plan, but you've got utility lines and poles all over your place that kind of interfere with some of what you want to do.
Yeah, and I have got that. I've had many discussions with MG&E, and they will take care of that when we're ready to pull the trigger. So
great. I see in the staff report, Doug, that Jake, quote, encouraged, unquote, park fees. Aren't they part of our ordinance? Every new residential unit built either dedicates so much land per unit or they pay park fees. Isn't that set in ordinance?
It is. I think previous discussions, previous projects, maybe CDA has ultimately, waived them or included them as part of some sort of negotiation. So I think that was more the origin of that. I think for this body, it was more pointing out, that there wasn't a parkland dedication. But I think that was more the intent of that point.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure, because we always talk to applicants about that, and it is ordinance. Now, what CDA chooses to do, that's their business. Question, you're not going down very far, but have you done any borings? Have you evaluated the water levels and the soils for where you're trying to build? Because that whole area, again, I reference as a filled area.
Yeah, so as of right now, we have some preliminary information that we should be fine with some pretty big spread footings on there.
Okay.
But we've not done any official borings. We've got information from around the neighborhood, but we're comfortable without getting the specific soil borings yet.
Okay, I just worried that you could hit some old buried wetlands or filled wetlands in there too. It looks like your underground garage is going to be about the elevation of that where that intersection is, so you shouldn't be going down, which is a good thing.
Correct.
Okay. Finishes. You probably heard part of the previous thing. I'm not sure what you're proposing for brick, but make sure we get some good solid masonry elements in there. And last thing, again, the architecture is fine looking at it, and I'm sure it's just illustrations now, and maybe it's shadows and stuff, but it feels awful dark to me. Just one comment, it feels dark, and I'm sure you want to make it inviting, so.
Feels dark?
Yeah, just when I look at it, it's just, there's some really little dark where it's underneath some of those areas with the dark siding and everything, it feels a little dark. I know you're the opposite, you're looking for light and bright, so it might just be the way my old eyes are looking at your elevations.
Okay, no, point well taken.
Parallel parking stalls, how long are those?
22 feet.
Yeah, it seems a little short, but there's a lot of small cars. I wouldn't be able to park in one. I'll just have to hang over. You're anticipating those would be striped?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Which then, of course, where we're talking about the deadhead of Bridge Road, that would be signed, of course, then for no parking from there down, at least for some distance.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I just want to say, I mean, you've really come a ways here from what I thought never work and where you're at right now. It's commendable for what you've done here, and I like your twist on this live work thing.
Oh, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Rob?
All right. Yeah, start off, I'm super excited about this. I love what I see so far, where it's come from, where it goes. I think it's perfect amount of light. I think it looks good. I think so much can be lost in the printer you're using. So I think that should be taken into consideration. And there's a lot of transparency in this building, which is one of the reasons I like it. You make it work and you have all this kind of open flowing pathways, which it's a corner piece and it's on a corner, so that's fitting. I was going to start by asking in the staff report, and forgive me if you've covered this, if this happened before the last time we met, but you met with the Eastside Business Alliance and One City Schools, or just Monona Eastside Business Association. Is there anything you want to share from that meeting?
No, just the feedback was get it going as quickly as you can, and we've got a lot of people that are expressing interest in it from the Business Alliance. One city, we haven't really got a whole lot of feedback from them. Now, we're still committed to doing, just if they can, we reach out to them. If there's anything we can do to help complement what they're doing, obviously we will do everything that we can. We also like the idea of providing some housing that is close on the same side of the street that's accessible to the school, and that's rather than crossing Broadway. So in terms of an overall use or specific use, to work in concert with One City, we haven't really got the feedback from them, and the other group is they've just been really incredibly supportive and offered their help to do whatever they can do, but we have to go through our process as well. So
yeah.
So
well, that's good. Thanks for the little recap there. I'm going to bounce around a little bit like I do. I like the live work option, the way you're approaching that. I think it provides a lot of flexibility with rental or sale. I know that's not our purview, but I think that makes a lot of sense. I could see a lot of people being attracted to these spaces. And they don't pay me enough on Plan Commission to do the market research, but I'm sure you have done your due diligence, and I appreciate the findings you found with your other projects.
You get paid?
Yeah. You don't? Is that on the record? as far as the parking goes, I'm happy with what I see. I'm especially thrilled with the on-street parking because it's a pet peeve of mine, and it's in so many communities. There's these landing strips of roads that are on single-family lots, and they're just so wide and so underused. And it's nice to see a road that's actually going to be parked, like it's going to be used. So I love the idea of using on-street parking, and the location makes it especially non-confrontational because there's not a lot of overlap uses in the area. So I'm all in favor of that. Couldn't get better use for it. It's a lot of complimentary stuff about, I like the GI efforts you're putting into the project. Bummed to see the car program go out, but I believe that you are committed to providing the best alternative transportation options. You know, you're looking at a fleet of electric of bicycles, B-cycle. I really hope one of those works out to your benefit in the communities.
And can I just interrupt you for 1 second? So it's not that we don't want to have a community car or some other program there, but we can't have that. It's not going to be the tail that wags the dog, right? So we wanted to make sure that we were overall in a solid position where we felt good, the residents would feel good, and then the Plan Commission felt good about this project, and that we weren't going to overextend or expose ourselves to anything down the road. And I think once we fully understood what that impact was, assessed our risk, hey, let's pull this back just 5%, and then we can still fit within all of our guardrails. Now, having said that, we would still like to process through the first couple of years here, and then see what we can do for a ride sharing program. But that would just be implemented at a later date. And again, we still feel it's the right thing to do. But either the timing or the demographics, I think we need to get this up and operating, and then we can determine what the next steps would be for that.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, that's great. Oh, I had something else, but I think I forgot. Oh, I was just going to end up with the overall look of the project. I can't stress enough, I'm excited about it. It's different and it's exciting, but it's thoughtfully done and tastefully done. It provides a lot of unique spaces, those rooftop spaces, those under canopy spaces. I think it's done in a really nice way that it's not a dangerous design. It's an interesting design, and I think it will have some staying power. It won't look like some weird experiment. That's all.
Great, thank you, Rob. And Rob, by the way, if you need to see like car parking on streets, like you come over to Christie's neighborhood or if you're missing seeing the cars on the street, anytime. Christy, go ahead.
Yeah, I got you, Rob. Yeah, thanks so much. I am also really excited about this project. It's high interest, contemporary design. I think it'll look great in that corridor. I also think about, you're probably going to get some sight lines and views of the wetlands and the river, which I think will be fabulous, which I get all the windows for that and then you've also got that beautiful like oak forest just to the south, which, it's a cool contrast because you've got the busy West Broadway corridor, but then nature. So yeah, I think it's going to really appeal to a lot of people. Not only because of the unique offering of this live workspace, but also because of the ecosystem around you. I really do like the idea of, the rent and buy option. I think, we really want to diversify our housing stock here, and this is kind of that missing middle piece. So I think that's just great. I'm also excited about the geothermal option. That's just a wonderful mode of heating and cooling. And as far as the one stall per 400 versus the one stall per 300, I think that can totally work because your employees live in the space. Where you see me here, this is where I sit all day long and I'm working and I'm thinking about, well, I'm doing my day job, or if I'm freelancing graphic design or marketing, I wish I had a live workspace because my whole living room is my office. So I think it's just a great offering. I agree with Chris and that, that you came up with some really unique solutions for your parking, and the on-street is just a great use of that. I like that you have kind of plan A, plan B, plan C for your parking. And then I really do, I was sad also to see the car share program go away, but I like your cautious approach. And I think it was Brian mentioned, you could maybe, at some point that can come back, and as, you kind of get this rolling and off the ground, that makes sense to me. I think the fleet of e-bikes, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm loving that idea, because sometimes the B-cycle, love the B-cycle as well, but think about riding the B-cycle to Metro Market. It doesn't really work because, you have to park it there. You only have a half-hour rental window. You park it there, you can't really lock it up. There's no charging station, you're committed to those charging stations. So it works well for visitors or people, recreating, but like in a utilitarian sense, it's not as functional. And so I like that idea of the fleet of e-bikes. Not sure how you can pull that off, but you pulled off a lot here. So, I was curious about the business name. Do you say Besa? And do you have a story on that, or where that came from?
So yeah, Jason Iverson is more dialed in with the story of that, but I always pronounce it Bisa, and then he always corrects me. So it must be Besa.
Okay.
And it is a word in Macedonian, because that's where Nick and Vasco are from, that has a particular meaning of honor or keeping one's word or a bond. So that's in discussions with them and trying to come up with a name, it was, the sort of bond that they have with the city of Monona and what they're trying to reach out and contribute back. So.
Oh, nice. Then I just wanted to mention one other thing is to make sure you know that the Madison Metro is revamping their entire system with a 2023 rollout. And so thinking about that bus shelter, we know they're going to maintain that West Broadway corridor, but where that shelter might be, before you, get too set on something. Just wanted to make sure you knew about that.
Yeah, and we have noted that, and that's something that we're committed to. I'm just not exactly sure where, like you said, where that's going to land. So.
All right. Yeah, and I'm really excited too that you're talking with MG&E about getting that area all cleaned up with all the strings hanging.
Yeah, they're always. I have found them to be so great to work with, and once we started. Once I started talking to the guy that I always deal with over there, he said, "Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. We'll get it figured out."
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really excited to see this progress. Thanks so much for bringing it to Monona.
Oh, absolutely.
Susan?
Yeah, I also appreciate all the changes and feel much more comfortable with the size in terms of parking, the number of units. And thank you, Christy, for asking about the name, because I was wondering about that as well. One question I have related to that, though, with the change in the ride share, is in the beginning, that was a big component in what was to be the affordability of these apartments, was the ride sharing piece. I mean, that's how it was kind of presented. And I'm just wondering what the impact of not having that program is. I mean, do you see an impact in terms of the rents that you'll need to charge, or is there an impact on the rental?
Yeah, there might be a nominal impact, but so the whole idea of this was to look at rents, transportation, utilities, sort of all in one. If we could take off utilities and some of the transportation burden, then a little bit of the rent, where does that fall for an overall sort of monthly cost of living? So without, we couldn't necessarily subsidize all of the ride sharing, but we certainly could get to a point. The rent's going to be pretty much where it was with or without that. We just wanted to try to include that ride sharing as well. So
okay. Yeah, and I agree that as far as the parking stalls per unit for the live work units, that whether the number is 350, whatever, I think we should provide some flexibility for that. It makes sense given the nature of the project. And I'm comfortable with alternatives of condos versus rentals, and you'll have to work out an HOA situation, but you'd have to do that anyway. The one thing I noticed, I think in your description, that for the live work units, it's possible that down the road someone might own one of those and decide to simply live there but close off the workspace and lease it out. That sounds reasonable to me too. I don't know if that would create another parking thing. I mean, that's way down the road, I would assume. So I don't really have other questions. I think the exterior looks good as well. I'd always like to see more masonry than metal. But that will come later also. Let's see. And I think someone mentioned a couple drop-offs in the front would be good. But yeah, otherwise, I really am pleased with how this has come also and feel much more comfortable. I always wanted to be able to fully support this, but I was a little nervous about it with the parking, so I think this is better, and I really appreciate all the work you've done on it. So
yeah, thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anything else from the commission? Chris Holmberg.
I'm sorry, I always forget something, don't I? I like what you've proposed for the little sitting area and, for the residents in there. And I hope we can keep it like that, but I'm sure you understand that there would be a condition of approval if it's approved, that the planning commission will be able to make you come back and install those additional stalls if it comes to be a really parking nightmare that none of us anticipate. What I like about this is that you found an option that if worse comes to worse, there is an area where you might lose a parallel parking stall but gain 6 or 7 on the site, and it might be the difference. So I would anticipate a condition of approval that would talk about that, although I much, much prefer that we never had to do that. I prefer it the way you have it laid out.
Great, thank you, Chris. Let me just add, Chris, that I too am very excited about this. I really appreciate all the work that you've put into it. I appreciate, we've had numerous discussions about rentals versus condos, and frankly are concerned about having maybe too many rentals. And so I love the idea of being able to go one way or the other. Love the geothermal. And I would go back to something that Corrine said and that Chris just referenced, and something that Christy just said, which is given that this is next to some woods and water, and you're apt to have some pretty nice sight lines. And I love the idea of a rooftop thing, frankly, as a resident amenity. Because from up there, I think people would be able to have more of a view of those woods and would be off the street, even though the street isn't that busy now as as One City Schools ramps up to hundreds of students over time, that street's going to get busier. So I think a rooftop option, if that's an option, would be a really cool amenity to add to an already cool development. So, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you feel like you need anything else from us tonight? Do you feel like you have everything you need?
I do, but I just want to take another minute here to talk about the rental versus, any sort of owner-occupied product. There's so many rentals going in Dane County, and we just finished a condo project. We've got another mixed-use one going on in Madison, but from everyone's perspective here, just having that diversity just really makes sense to us. And not only from an equity perspective, but just the opportunity to not be on that hamster wheel of constantly renting, right? And we get it. There's not much single family product out there, but that doesn't mean that we can't find alternate solutions for an ownership model. Right. And we just think that the spread and the effect of having that and maintaining some of that equity and wealth is just great for the community. And it's always kind of I don't want to say disheartening, but it's just watching more and more of these larger scale rental properties go up. It's like, hey guys, we can't build single family homes fast enough. We know that. But can we find something that's a compromise, that still allows that wealth creation, and that's what we've been really trying hard to do here over the last couple of years. So is to find that model.
Right. Well, I lived in a condo for 25 years in Chicago, so that was my first home purchase, right? And I know, we all hear from residents here in Monona who are looking to downsize, who aren't ready to go to the Heritage Retirement Center, but they but they don't want to be doing their big yard anymore, or they're looking to downsize out of their single family homes too. So I just think they're, and they don't necessarily want to rent. So I think again, it's just part of the missing middle, right? It's part of the mix. It's important. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say I strongly agree with Nancy that an ownership model would be awesome, and especially for a small business person that wants to do something like that, or for young people starting out. I strongly would, if I had a choice, prefer the ownership model.
And that's overwhelming the feedback that we're getting too. So,
well, again, Chris, thank you. We really appreciate all the extra work that you put in, and exciting.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too.
That brings us to number 7. Reports from staff report.
Thank you. Just a quick update. I know a few of you were out there, but I think last Monday, Flora and Nicole opened. They had their grand opening, and just wanted to let you all know, go take a look at it. There were a few, just given the time of year, there's still a few outstanding conditions, most notably the parking lot. But certainly once the weather improves, landscaping, great asphalt for the parking lot, that's all going to be added. But certainly it's a welcome improvement. So just wanted to give that update from an economic development perspective. With regards to upcoming plan commission items, a few more things in the hopper, staying busy. Just received an application for the Southtown Office Park for a pre-hearing for a potential mixed-use project down there with Lakestone Properties. So that would be a pre-hearing, but I just wanted to let you guys know we've had a couple discussions at a staff level, but that's been submitted. So most likely a tentative for the next meeting on the 28th, just to get some preliminary feedback. As I recall, it would be a phased development, but they just wanted to get some ideas from the concepts and things like that. Also, the Slindy project, I'll be checking in with them in terms of the next steps for the GDP and when that will be considered. There's just a little bit of phasing and scheduling to be discussed with that. And there's finally potentially a signage application that would be coming through that I'd be looking for some commission feedback on. So most likely a couple of those will be on the docket for the 28th, but certainly trying to be mindful as I'm working on the larger projects that we don't stack too many of them, so that we don't have 3 or 4 hour meetings. So.
Much appreciated, Doug. Any diversity, equity, inclusion updates?
Nothing from staff.
Okay, great, thank you. We did just get a report from the chair of the ad hoc committee at the City Council this last Monday, ad hoc committee on diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and they're making good progress. And they identified 4 different. They're working in sort of 4 different work groups. Christy, do you remember the 4?
Let me see if I can remember. One is city actions. One is business and culture.
Yep.
I think one is support.
Yep.
That's right. And then the other one is community and like community education.
Right. Got it.
Wow, I did it.
Yeah.
We've been meeting a lot lately, so yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for that update.
Thank you.
Updates on sustainability efforts. I don't really have anything there, except for I would say that the Sustainability Committee has made some great progress lately I went back through the capital budgets for the last several years and then looking forward 5 years. Because I think sometimes it's hard for us to fully grasp everything that the city has done as we move towards renewable energy and clean energy. And there's a really terrific path that we've created for ourselves. In terms of building efficiency, which we've invested in every year. I mean, all of our buildings, have LED now, and we've done building envelope studies, and we're doing significant upgrades to the public works garage, and so there's just a lot of good things happening that I think sometimes get lost in the weeds or in the budgets that we don't necessarily capture in one place. So I would just say, even those of us that pour over those budgets every year don't necessarily look at the whole quite as often as we might to realize what progress has been made when we look at things like 25 by 25 or 30 by 30 now, and our clean energy specifically commitments. And the Sustainability Committee will be coming out with more as it relates to all of that soon in terms of our energy roadmap for the city. So with that, does the Plan Commission have any requests of staff? Chris?
Requests and a couple things. But Doug, where at the Southtown Office Park? Is this a new building?
So it's the existing office space. So I want to say that it's closest to Gisholt.
And what do they want to do? They want to repurpose it somehow?
It would be a new mixed use development. So
So you're talking about taking the office park and turning it into some residential?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I apologize ahead of time, but we have all these long meetings. I never have a chance to go over any of this, so I'm going to do it quickly. There was a couple of presentations, some continuing education we had to take, and the one was talking about, there's a professor at UW and somebody from USGS had done some studies on the phosphorus connection to the lakes. And it was pretty interesting. And one of the things we learned was that the concentration of phosphorus in the soil near the lakes is 10 to 100 times higher than the concentration of phosphorus in the lakes. So one thing they're really trying to do is cut down on some of the water contact with that, either get to infiltrate or do things so that it's not just washing this phosphorus in the lakes, which got me to think about our ordinance. And with our best intentions, when we recodified, we put in a little segment that said, where possible, our applicants should try to connect the roof drains and such and let them run over grass first before it gets in the storm sewer. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, are we helping or hurting with that? Because there's already a lot trying to infiltrate there, and now we're taking clean water with virtually no phosphorus other than airborne, and we're taking it and saturating it in the grass with adding some phosphorus and then dumping it in the storm sewer, which goes right to the lake. And it seems to me our good intentions might be hurting us, because he did a bunch of studies. You know, it sounds like, oh, it's just going over the grass. He did some studies, and the phosphorus it picks up just going over the grass. They isolated some areas. It's amazing, and it's much, much higher than the concentration of the phosphorus in the lakes. So we're definitely adding phosphorus to the lakes. So my thought is we should talk about at some point in time if that maybe should get out of there, and we should just talk about actually the opposite is as quick as practical. They should connect that with the storm sewer and not let it go over too much, because it's clean water. So that's the first one. It's food for thought. And the second one was a presentation by Bill Selbig from USGS. He's done a bunch of studies on canopy trees, and I know we're all advocates for canopy trees, and a lot of it's aesthetics and cooling and such, but he had found an area, I can't remember, it was up by Green Bay somewhere, where they had a whole street of ash trees that they were going to have to take down, and he had a perfect study area, because you have to have a matched study to do any study that's worth its being statistically. And so he studied that area for 2 years with water quality and water quantity aspects, and then they cut down all the ash trees, and he studied it again for a year, and he found some amazing information. And one of them was this tree, which was highly vegetated with canopy trees, that I think it was, I don't take this for certain, but I think it was around 30% less quantity going off that street when it had all those canopy trees, because they hang over the street. And gentleman in the Arboretum and one other place did a study on the trees, and you've got this big canopy, but he had, I don't know, 100 different water gauges around this tree, and you found out that a lot of this water was pulled down through the branching structure and right down the trunk, and there's a really hot spot right by the trunk where a lot of that water went. There's, of course, runoff at all areas, but a lot of it went right down towards that trunk. So there's another aspect where it's not only these canopies are taking it and they're pulling it away from the impervious, and then also through evapotranspiration and the water the tree uses and evaporation, he found it was an amazing amount of water that doesn't go into the storm sewer, that they're actually keeping out of that water cycle, which is either evaporating back off, getting used in the tree, or going down into the infiltrating. So I found that really interesting, and I think an emphasis for when we look at canopy trees, they do a lot more good than we were even thinking about. I found that part eye-opening, so I just wanted to share that. Sorry for the extra time.
Well, thank you. No, I think that those are very interesting tidbits. I thank you for sharing. I actually saw a report that scared the bejesus out of me a couple of nights ago. That was actually, they were talking about the increase in the price of lumber, and which I know obviously Chris, you or a lot of us know about, but they were specifically talking about it as it related to the infestation of the pine beetle, and how much forested area has been, just completely taken out of production as a result of the pine beetle. And I just didn't realize, I mean, I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was that volume. It was just massive. it's part of the supply issue, big time. So, Christy, did you have your hand up? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to, Chris got me thinking about the phosphorus, and running into the lakes. And so another area that I struggle with is, we put that massive underground chamber in at Stonebridge. And so what it seems that it is, though, is it catches all these leaves, and then we're to, go in there regularly and scoop those leaves out, and we've got this massive drain coming right into the lake, which is basically making a phosphorus tea. And so I'm going, and I know that was kind of DNR led and for our Reach 64 program. And I'm just like, wow, I don't see how that's really working, and so I don't know how you fix that. But then one other tidbit I wanted to mention was on sustainability, but this kind of all is on sustainability as well. Was I mentioned at City Council about the Wisconsin Saltwise program, and that the city, Monona, I had asked the city if they were going to consider getting certified as a Saltwise champion, and they are in the process of doing that, and encouraging people, landscape professionals or, any maintenance crews, snow plowing crews, they can take this salt certification course for free through Wisconsin Saltwise. And, salt is not a lot different than phosphorus. Once it's out there forever until actually salt's worse than phosphorus. You can never get it back. Phosphorus, sometimes you can dig it out and suck the muck, but salt is out there, and it's, salinization is a real problem.
Chris, did you want to, you had your hand up?
Yeah, as far as
you're talking about the storm sewer. Yep.
Yeah, the leaves, actually Brad Brunn from Monona was at that conference too, so I'm sure he's listening. But the leaves, there was another study presented on the leaves and how important it is. And the vast majority of our dissolved phosphorus, which is the toughest one to get out, comes from the leaves sitting in the street and not doing regular leaf pickup. And I got to give a shout out to our public works. I think they do the best job of leaf pickup of anyone in Dane County that I've ever seen. They have dates, but they're out there all the time sucking leaves. And the best thing you can do for the phosphorus, you're right, Christy, is get rid of the leaves.
Yeah.
Got to get rid of the leaves.
Yeah, and in fact, since I have one of those in front of my house, Christy, and there's one also, which is to say the big storm sewer box that we put in at Stonebridge, and also one, of course, at Schluter when we did that park. All the drains by Schluter and in front of me are the ones that I adopted. So in addition to I would say that that apparatus that went into Stonebridge actually is collecting a lot of other stuff besides the leaves, and keeping that particulate matter out as well. So.
And to add to that, the particulates that are in those storm traps or the different systems, some of the phosphorus actually adheres to those particulates. So when they go in, they suck it out, they are pulling phosphorus out of there too, because without those, the leaves would just go right into the Yahara River in the case you were bringing up, or other places. So it actually gives us a little bit of a chance to capture at least some of it by having it contained.
Yeah, this is true. My kids loved going to Stonebridge prior to the chamber because all of the washout, and it was like hidden treasure. They would find forks and trays from the high school and all kinds of things that went down the storm drains. So yeah, exciting times.
All right. Anything else? I'll take a motion.
I'll move.
Move adjournment.
Do I have a second? Yeah, I have a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fantastic. We're adjourned. Doug, feel better? I hope we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Doug. Good luck.
Thank you.
Hang in there.
Stay strong.
For you and your
Thanks.
family, everybody take care.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.